Alright, this is OK here, and we have a very special stream for you today in which we're going to be looking at the games of our friend Zher0, Zher0, founder of the Crazy House League, and my teammate in several seasons of Lichess4545. Last season our team was called Stop Googling, Erin isn't a girl's name. Zero chance Erin is a girl's name, OK. So incorporating the names of Zher0, Erin, and myself, OK, in our team name, which actually won the prize for favourite team name of the league. But Zher0, our captain, was quite disappointed with his performance in the league, and even to the point of wanting to give up chess. So I'm not sure if he'll see this video, but hopefully he sees it when he gets back after his break. And hopefully you can see that he was unlucky, and there's some concrete things he can learn from his games, which, if he rectifies, he can be the much stronger player that he is. He's rated, as you can see, in the 1400s, but he's a scholar of the game, and he knows a lot more than the average 1400. And he was disappointed in particular because he used to be a 1600, say, a year ago, and then he studied more and more and more, and instead of gaining rating, he was slipping. And I think that's the worst thing when playing chess. You want to have the feeling that you're improving. And the thing is, he knows lots of stuff, but sometimes he's getting some of the basic stuff wrong. So this stream is all about trying to, there is some. It isn't just a coincidence. It wasn't. It was bad luck. His opponents played very well, but it wasn't purely bad luck. So this will be an analysis stream, so no challenges. It was also some fundamental errors in his style of play, which, as a team, we should have caught. But I think, and we did point out some things, but the most fundamental things I only sort of discovered after having some conversations with the Dutch international master Opperwezen, who's currently the number one bullet player on Lichess with a rating of 3,103. And he knows the feeling that Zher0 felt of disappointment when things don't go according to plan. And he said himself he'd played in tournaments where he made this same mistake. And the fundamental mistake, probably the theme, is not developing your pieces well enough, fast enough in the opening. That will be the theme of the video. And he said, yeah, he played a tournament where he didn't do that, and he suffered as well. There are some grandmasters who can play a very attacking style without playing classical chess, developing, controlling, bringing all your pieces into the attack. But you have to be really very good to be able to do that. And so we'll see. There's that and other things we'll see as we go along. So actually this position is from the game one. Zher0 was black, and he won this game. Can you see the move he played here, which led white to resign? So that's a problem for the chat, just to make sure you guys are here and you can hear me. So what does black play in this position? So all these games are going to be 8 games in the league. If you're interested in the league, it's an opportunity to play slower time control chess on Lichess. You play 1 game of 45 plus 45 each week against your opponent. And you can play as an individual in something called the Lone Wolf League, but this was actually the team format. It was season 16. For the first time, there were teams of 8, and Ubique29 is the first in the chat to get the answer. F5, indeed. And on seeing that move from Zher0, white resigned, because if he takes with the bishop, he's losing the rook, and if he takes with the queen, takes, and he's still losing the rook. So, end of game. Okay. So I'm glad we've got people here, and I'm going to start from the beginning of game one. So game one, as we've had a spoiler that he won it, but I still think there's a lot I want to say about all of these games. And now, I can't always say in-depth stuff about the opening. I'm not Peter Lecco. I don't always play these openings as black. So my focus is going to be on sort of basic understanding, but also looking deeper into lines. Okay, so d4, d5. So bishop f4, so white is playing the London system, e6. So there are loads of ways you could play. If you're going to play e6, you're basically saying I'm going to trap in my bishop. I'm not going to play bishop f5 and then e6. So what you're going to lose some activity, but you're also going to get a more solid structure. So there are pros and cons with every move. On the one hand, it means the bishop can be used to defend. If this bishop comes out to here and this knight comes to here and here, it means this bishop is there to support everything. On the other hand, this bishop is going to be quite passive. It's not going to be, obviously out here there'd be more active threats, and so there are pros and cons with every position. So e3 and c5. So now with this move, black has set out his pawn structure. The move c5 is to challenge the d pawn with the c pawn. So it's basically saying, I'm going to at some point take your d pawn, and I'm going to exchange my c pawn, then the e pawn will disappear. My c pawn for your e pawn. Not only that, so I'll have more pawns in the center than you, and not only that, I'll also open a file for my rook. So, and if you take me, then you're just going to help me develop fast, and also you'll be exchanging your d pawn for my c pawn. So either way, you're losing one of these central pawns. So that's the idea. Now, every move has a positive and a negative. What do you lose by playing this? You lose control of d6. That's not really an issue at the moment because that's quite well defended. So it's a good move. It's really tackling the center. So of course one could play. In theory one could play knight c6, but c5 feels like the right move to do. Okay, and now with this move, black has set out his pawn structure. And he's ready to develop. This knight will come to here, this bishop will come to here, this knight will come to here. Maybe at some point he'll take this pawn and the bishop will come out either to here, or even to here. So he has done all the moves he needs to begin rapid development. So it was a good idea to play c5 before playing knight c6, because it means he can... Knight c6, it's challenging the center, and then knight c6 can follow, and then we've gotten some nice pressure on the center from the knight and the pawn. So it's a very nice move. And of course it's just opening theory. Okay, so white just going for a very solid setup as well. So okay, both sides have set their structure. Okay. But then at this point, Zher, instead of doing what I recommended of just developing all his pieces, he played this move. So if you can say in chat, what do you think of that? Why would this be not such a good move? So let me say some of the good things about this move first. So it lays claim to a lot of territory on the queen side. Often in chess, white's got a space advantage. Well, in this position so far, it's black who's got the space advantage. It blocks in the light squared bishop. Those are the two things especially I can think of. And it's putting a piece, at least a pawn, already in the opponent's half. So any thoughts on why it might not be such a good move? So if you stick a pawn in your opponent's half of the board, in your opponent's face, okay, that's going to be challenged. That's the first thing. It's asking for a fight. This pawn in the opponent's half of the board. You're sticking this pawn in that bishop's face. You're asking for a fight. You're asking for white to play b3. Numberman768 says too many pawn moves in the opening. Yeah, that's so one thing. So it's too many pawn moves in the opening. Another thing would be, so it means by doing that you haven't brought your pieces out. So you're a little bit less developed for doing 1, 2, 3, 4. But also it's asking for a fight, this move. It's asking, in fact, for this move. Because you're sticking this pawn in the bishop's face, you're asking for b3, and the question is black ready for a fight? And then this links to too many pawn moves in the opening. Black hasn't actually developed his pieces. He isn't quite ready for a fight just yet. Realsight8000 is just jumped ahead and said everything I wanted to say. And Lega Besketning says, you always want to develop and castle as fast as possible, right? Yeah, usually. b3, c takes b3, a takes b3, and black seems fine. So, against b3, so if you take, okay, so you're fine, but the problem is you've activated this rook, and white has got now pawns which are closer to the center than before. So, and the point is this move is coming next, and again he's going to be getting pawns even closer to the center than before. So Realsight8000 says, yeah, black is not fine here. Basically, white has got a very comfortable position because he has more pawns in the center of the board, and he's just going to be overrunning black. So these pawns are going to be running over. So you can't really take. What you would do instead might be something like this, and as people have said in the chat, there's this move a4. Okay, Pethidine makes a very nice point, queen a5. Now this is a very good point. So the idea of a4 is a6 doesn't work because of takes, and rook takes rook. Oops. So this is a very important pattern in the Queen's Gambit, and this is a kind of Queen's Gambit structure. If you ever accept the Queen's Gambit, this pawn is hard to protect because of exactly this maneuver of b3, a4. So the point of this b3, a4 is when you take here, white does not take back this pawn, he takes here. So he takes towards the center. This pawn can always be recaptured later. But Pethidine makes a very lovely point, which is queen a5. And it's a way of defending this pawn. White can't take here because the rook is pinned. So it's a way of saying, well, black might not be ready for a fight, but white isn't quite ready for the fight either. And so queen a5 would indeed be the best move in this position. White could then maybe go b4, queen b6, takes. And why would white be happy with this position? It's because white has the half-open file. So neither side is ready for a fight. Both sides are going to be busy developing. But once everything's ready, that rook will be coming out to here or to here. We're going to be forming that queen here, or castle, and get the other rook over. And forming the gun, what's it called again? Is it Achilles' gun? Someone's gun. And yeah, so white is definitely very happy in this position. Alekhine's gun. Yeah, sorry, Achilles' gun. Alekhine's gun, or Alekhine's gun. Okay, very good. So yeah, so this would be. So let's just play through how the game might continue. Knight f3. You don't want to get in trouble down the A file, so maybe you try and open up your own A file. Knight b to d2 because you want to make sure that the rook is protected. Oh, I just want to mention here, there is an idea of bishop takes knight, hoping to win a pawn. So if I take with the rook, he's got rook takes pawn, but I could take with the queen, takes. So it looks like white's just won a pawn, but then you have this move, queen b5, and the pawn is actually impossible to protect. So I'm going a bit deep here, but that's just an interesting point. This apparent bishop takes knight doesn't win a pawn. So you could just develop, and white develops. But this is just a sample. It's just normal play. This is a sort of nice move because you're attacking the bishop, and the knight's defending the bishop, and you're threatening bringing the bishop in here, attacking this knight, swapping that knight off, and then winning the bishop. Bishop has to retreat. So you can see how white's got a lot of the initiative in this position. So you get a position like this. Black isn't losing yet by any means, but you can see who's got the initiative in this position. And Zher0's says after queen a5, you can also just play knight f3. So going back to here, knight f3, just slow. Okay, I'll just put the engine on to see what it recommends. It just recommends normal development here for both sides, I imagine. Knight b7, bishop e2, and so on. Yeah, so that was the other way of doing it. Okay. And at some point he's going to be taking this and opening up the file. The point is, at some point this file is going to open, and it's never going to open in black's favor. Okay, so this is the problem with this move. It's asking for a fight, and black isn't ready for that fight. So what should black do in this position? I mean, the very normal thing to do would be knight c6, for example. And then there are all kinds of things both sides can do, but both sides are going to be just developing normally. Just to say one particular idea, if black goes for this queen b6, sometimes you get these positions where the queens face off like this, and it's worth noting that you don't have to take this queen, and that queen doesn't have to. You don't ever need to take this queen, and in fact, taking this queen is actually a disadvantage. Like we saw earlier, you're bringing although these are doubled pawns, you'd be bringing pawns towards the center, and this would actually improve black's pawn structure. So I just wanted to just something to note. So instead of queen b3, white could also go queen c2. Anyway, so this is just creating a little place for the bishop. Anyway, this is just I wanted to show you this particular position. There's some nice discovery threats with knight b4. Knight b4 takes, and bishop here pinning the queen and the rook. That's a little trap that could arise in the position. Okay, so this very passive bishop could come alive. Okay, but going back to this. Okay, so what is the? I think we said originally the point of this position is just to develop your pieces normally, and let the rook come to this file. The great thing about the c pawn, at some point it's going to take on here and it's going to open up this file. Black wants a fight, obviously, but he wants a fight on his terms, and I think that's the point. If you go like this, you're asking for the fight at once, and you're not quite ready for it. Okay, so white in this game didn't play b3. So was there anything else I wanted to say about b3? b3, b5. I think I said everything I wanted to say here. Yeah. So he didn't play that. He went for knight f3. Knight f3, knight f6, knight b to d2. So now, throughout this whole period, obviously, b3 would be good for white. b5, okay, so now at least the structure is more secure. So another reason why this is not so this is double-edged, because on the one hand you shut off the light squared bishop of white, on the other hand you've blocked in your own light squared bishop. Bishop e2, bishop d6. So even in this position, so b3 is basically always good. White is ready for this fight. This pawn is just stuck in white's half of the board, and white should challenge it, but he didn't. Bishop g3, castles, and now he plays b3. Okay, so I guess from the beginning of the game again, so he sets up a nice structure. That's a slight mistake, but white doesn't capitalize on that mistake until a few moves later. b3. So what is white threatening? White is threatening to take this pawn, and you don't want to take back from the center, you want to take back this way. So it looks like the b file might be opening. And here, Zero played queen b6. Riosai says black seems okay here. Yeah. Now queen b6, so this I think is another pattern I've noticed in these games I'm going to analyze. He sees the b file might open and he's moving the queen. Now you don't want the queen to be on the b file because you'll just lose a tempo when the rook moves into that file, and that queen's going to have to move off the file. So much better in this position would be developing your own pieces. In fact, a5 and bishop takes g3 are suggested by the engine. So why? So bishop takes g3 just h takes g3. So and maybe just okay. So one idea is just developing. Okay, hang on. So why? I'm just trying to think why again. That doesn't seem right. Okay, let's go straight with a5. So bishop takes g3 is completely fine. I just think a5 is stronger. So why is a5 stronger? So this might take, and you're ready to go here. Okay, I see. So what you're worried about is, yeah, the move b3 is okay, but black's already responded to b3 with b5. So the move you should be scared of is still a4. And you wouldn't really have an answer to that if your pawn is say here, because the threat is takes, and we're not ready for a fight. So the point of a5 is that if white goes a4, you can do this. I'm not saying it's brilliant, but I think it's the best move. Yeah, it is the best move in the position. We're not ready for a fight, so we keep the a file closed. So I think that's the point of a5 there. Okay, queen b6 I think is a slight mistake because you're walking into the b file. And here white should indeed just go a4. But white made, what to me is a subtle mistake, I would say, which is to go b4. And now black really is okay. Because now black can open up this a file on his terms with a5. He doesn't have to take immediately, but he's putting pressure on this pawn. When he wants to take, he can take. So just going back here, queen b6 I think is a mistake because you should just be developing your pieces ready for a fight. a5 is quite a subtle idea, a way of saying if a4 I can just avoid the fight because we're not ready yet. And so the best move here is a5. The next best is develop your pieces. Queen b6 is a bit dodgy because that queen doesn't really do anything here. And after this move, yeah, black should definitely go a5, not because he wants to do anything immediately on the a file, but just to stop white doing anything on the a file. Because what in fact he did was knight b to d7, and the problem with this is white could just go takes, and now white can go a4, and he's opening the a file on his terms. To me, knight c6 looks better than a5. So, I mean, obviously not once the queen is there. In this position, yeah, knight c6 looks very decent. But a5, so knight c6, I think the problem is I'm worried about this, but then I guess you can still go b4. Okay, so it's still this idea. I don't want to open up the a file. Very nice. So knight c6 also stops the b file opening up. So for black, I think Lega Bazatning says for black, I think h6 is better. I'm not quite sure where. So in this position, yeah, this would be very good as well. But this happened, and now the problem is he's allowing white to open up the file on his terms. But white didn't do that. White just played queen c2. So rook to e8. So both sides are missing the opportunity. Are missing the opportunity of taking the initiative on the A file so that they can control when this file is opened. So as an example, if black did go A5, white can't go A4 immediately because it'd be takes. Yeah, this pawn is too weak. So after A5, see, white is then on the back foot with. He can't do this either. So what does he do? He'd have to just go b takes a5, rook takes, and then the file is half open, and black can slowly maneuver his forces onto this half open file. And white, in some sense, black will be ready for this battle first. So this is the idea. Okay, so queen c2, rook e8, knight e5. So a little bit of a cheapo in that if you take that knight, the pawn takes back with the fork on the knight and the bishop. So then a nice move from Zher, just refusing to take it. Okay, so we see a position where it's very closed here, and if I'd say there are two ideas in the position, takes, knight here. At some point, this idea, which still exists in the position even here, just to open up this file and get all your forces down this A file. So that's one idea of the position. Both sides could take initiative down the A file. And the other is some kind of break along the E file. So those are the two ideas. And it's actually quite a difficult skill to be able to know which one is best. I don't know the answer myself in a way, and I guess that's the sort of thing that comes with experience. So we get f3, knight d6, and castle. Okay, so finally both sides are developed, and we're in a position where, as I said, black has got two big ideas in the position: a5 and play down the A file, or e5 and play down the E file. And in a sense, black is actually doing nicely here because both his rooks are in prime position to do either of these ideas. And so if I was in this position, I would want to calculate that idea and see if it worked in this particular position, where it would lead. So A5 we've seen quite a lot of. Let's just experiment with E5, just see where it would lead us. So we'd take it, and then we'd want to take with the rook, because we want to open up this file. If we took with the pawn, then we'd have to push this one again. And so our idea is this will then be a weakness on E3, and we'd want to kind of put put queen and rook on this pawn, and white would have a weakness here to target. So queen could go here, both eyeing this weakness and protecting that one, and you could double on here, and then white could white's in trouble. I mean this pawn is like to fall, so you could go f4, just so that he takes here, and then he can take here with check, king h8. Now the bishop's hanging, so the bishop just moves out the way. Now it looks like this pawn is also hanging. So this is still just an experiment of should we play down the E file. We could take this pawn, but it's very dangerous because then white is doubling along this file. So that's not such a good idea. It's not bad, like this position is about equal. You could just give back the pawn basically and neutralize the threat. But probably this is slightly better for black. But anyway, I'm going a little bit too deep down this variation, but I'll just play just like a few ideas. There's queen c5 is a nasty idea, threatening this pin. So you might go like this. You take this pawn, but then you get pinned yourself, and then white tries to win back that pawn. If he doesn't try and take back the pawn, other ideas, he could go... Okay, I'm not... Yeah, so I did doubling the rook along this rank. Lots of different... if white tries to stop him doubling along this rank, then try to put a knight... Yes, this is... I was thinking in this position, do we move our knight to here? And it's a very nice thing is, if we did move our knight to here, just so that we're connecting our rook, queen and rook, but if we move our knight to here, where is it heading? It's got no squares to go to. I mean, it's got here, but it's really not going anywhere. So a very nice move in this position is this move. So we're giving our knight a place to go to, and then we're ready to move in. And even if he does this, we're in. So this would be another line, check, and then we'd try and push that pawn. That would be a kind of a variation. So it's a way of pressing our initiative. But okay, if I'm going a little bit too deep, that was just that would be one way of black playing it, of pushing this e5 pawn. I thought it was quite a nice idea in the position. It's not winning, but it's just an idea. So it's worth sort of checking every move. Does it work in this position? Okay, but Zher in fact played knight f5. Now, whenever you're in a position and your opponent plays a move, so the last move was castles. So you can ask yourself, is white threatening anything? And so the first thing, when it's your move, you should think, is white threatening anything? And yeah, white isn't really threatening anything. At some point, white might want to push this himself, but there's no immediate threat. At some point, he might want to create some kind of queen-bishop battery, but that looks kind of difficult because the light squares are controlled. So yeah, white isn't threatening anything. So we're free in some sense to follow our own plans. And we have this idea, and we have this idea. That's good. And we have this idea. And Zher decides on the move. Shouldn't white just play a4? Yes. Basically, white should have just played a4. Like even here, castles. I mean, black should play. Black should have played a5 as well. Even in this position. e5 is very interesting, but even a5 is just good here. But yeah, all along this whole sequence of moves, black should have played a5 and white should have played a4, because then both sides would have been the ones with control of when to open the a file and just to move in and take control of that file. So it would have been a slight edge to whoever played that move first. Okay, but Zher decided on a different move. He decided on the move knight f5. It's a very nice move. It's threatening knight takes pawn with a fork on the rook and the queen. Now, so that's his plan. Now, whenever you come up with a plan, you said, okay, I want to play this move. Something quite useful to do, and I find even myself, I forget to do it sometimes. You have a plan in mind, is to think, how is your opponent going to respond? And one really nice aspect of this move is that white can't respond by just pushing this pawn forwards, because this square is still undefended. So it'd be very nice if knight here, just pawn here, and then there was no follow-up threat. If it was just attacking the pawn, that would be it. So the problem with this move, so if you are going to play this move, you should be thinking in your head, what is white going to do to respond? What is white going to do to respond? He has to defend this pawn. There are only three ways of defending it: with the king, which is not ideal, with the queen, or with the queen. I think we can rule out defending it with the king. That's not... Stockfish actually gives it a second best move, so we can't rule it out completely. So white is going to probably defend with the queen. So even before you play this move, knight to f5, you shouldn't be doing it in the hope that your opponent's a patzer and won't notice the fork. You should be doing it in the expectation your opponent will notice it and play the best move. And the best move is probably queen to d2, I would say. And then you should have some idea of what are you going to follow this up with? Like, what have you achieved by moving your knight here? And maybe you have achieved something, or maybe you haven't, or maybe it's just equal, but there's a chance he misses this fork. And again, you have to think these are the two ideas in this position. So let's actually we examined e5 earlier. Let's just quickly, what would happen if we did e5 now? We have to take with, so if we take with the rook, that's putting nice pressure on this pawn. The problem is, white has this move. And I have to admit, I might not notice this myself, even if I was playing 45-45. That's annoying, because it's putting pressure on this pawn, but we can't take it because our queen is pinned. So could we have avoided that? Like, if we take with the pawn, it's the same. This is a problem. We're going to have to just back off, and somehow white is the one taking advantage of the open file. Okay, so by putting our knight here, if we want to follow it up with e5, we've actually made it harder to do so because of this idea. Rook takes, pawn takes, whichever way it is, pawn here, and it's white who has the initiative. And hi there, Oddscale in the Twitch chat. You're welcome. So even before you play this, you have to realize if we are going to play this move, queen d2, e5 is no longer going to be on our plan. So what you have to think is, does this move work, e5? And if it doesn't work, what do we have to do to make it work? Okay, so obviously we have to get our knight off f5 again. So that's why one perfectly good move in this position is actually to put your knight straight back on d6 again. It's not a bad move. I mean, the queen is in a slightly less active position, arguably, on d2 than on c2. So putting your knight back on d6 is a perfectly decent move. But there's another move. We could do the other pawn break, and we could try that out. So what's the point of this? If he takes us, we open up this file, we can create the Aliakin's gun along this file, and we have initiative. If he doesn't take, yeah, very nice. We don't take immediately. If we take immediately, the file opens before we're ready. This is why a5 was such a nice idea in this position, because we don't have to take until we're ready. We play rook a6 first, and then take. We get ready. We get all our forces there, and then take. And in fact, white's best, if white just hangs around here, he's going to get swamped. So white's best strategy is actually to try and open up, to try and get counterplay somewhere else. And that's why this knight move maybe was not so ideal, because the knight's going to have to back off. Takes, and this is quite pleasant for white, but only for black rather, but only a minor advantage, because white definitely is going to get some counterplay along the e file. So let's say it's still uncertain. So let's just go back. So instead of going knight here and so on, what could we have done? Yeah, so we could have done a5 immediately, and I think arguably that would have been slightly stronger, and here we could do something like rook a6, or we could even just go for that e5, our second idea. And yeah, and black is in a very pleasant position here, because on both fronts he is the one who gets to choose when to take, or if white takes him, he's already in prime position to take control of that file, because both his rooks are ready. So black actually has lots of ideas in this position. He has a5, he has e5, and he has knight f5. Knight f5 takes away the e5 opportunity, as I said, but he's still got the a5. His opponent, however, just defended the pawn, and so walked into the queen and rook fork. So that was very... he didn't have to do much, because he's now just won an exchange. And this is the kind of position where files are going to be opened up soon. Again, a5 is the best. So rooks are very powerful pieces in this position. This bishop is not going to be a match for a rook. It's on the opposite color to these pawns, but it's really just a hemmed-in bishop. So the rook is worth a lot. Rook e7 was played. Again, a5 was good, but everything works. Okay, so instead of opening up the a file, he was determined to open up the e file. So he secures up the a file. Very nice move, actually. Just secure everything up. Actually, not a nice move because it wastes time. He has an opportunity to straight away go with e5. Well, I mean, a very understandable move because you're worried that at some point this file will open up and there'll be counterplay down this file. But by doing this, he gives white an opportunity to try and stop e5. He plays e5 regardless, which loses a pawn in theory, but it's still useless for white. I mean, so we're just in. White could in theory win a pawn, but there's nothing. This pawn is not really going to go anywhere. Check, check, and the pawn is going to be mopped up. Well, the king is going to stop the pawn from queening, and the rook is just going to mop up all the pawns. So this would be a little bit more scary for black because he wins a pawn, he can turn it into a passed pawn. So just to repeat that line again. Playing this, whenever you play a move like this, you have to calculate the order of the exchanges. There are all sorts of things white can take. The problem is white has got two pieces on this. So if he takes here first, he's got an X-ray on this pawn here. And so he can win this pawn here, and he can even turn it into a pass pawn and try to look scary, but the pawn can't be pushed because you can just exchange off the rook and bring the king in to stop the pawn from queening, and then the rook can deal with everything else. So that would have been a little bit more scary, but in this position, white played this move, and so he just takes, and a brilliant move we just saw right at the beginning of the stream, which led to white's resignation, f5. Because if white takes that pawn with the bishop, he loses the rook, and if he takes with the queen, takes, and he still loses the rook. So he can't take it, and he's losing this piece. So he was already in exchange down, and he's going to go down a rook. Okay, so that was game one, round one of the league for Zher0, and it was a win. So just to say, Zher0 was quite disappointed with his performance in the league because he scored 2.5 out of 8. But as many people have said, that's I myself only scored 2.5 out of 7, so I was a weak board 2 in a way on board, and something pretentious when he first reached board 1 scored something like 0.5 point out of 8 or something. But I think what hurts him, as we'll see in the games, is the manner of some of his losses. But as I said, I think he was unlucky. Some of the games his opponents really did play very nicely, but also there are some things he can really take away and learn from the experience. So the first thing is develop pieces before going for. You already set out a nice structure to develop your pieces, so develop them before starting a fight. This move is just asking for a fight. You're lucky that white didn't take up the fight, but it's asking for a fight. And as we saw, this is the problem. If you take here, white takes here. And if you try and defend with the pawn, obviously the rook hangs. And there's a very cunning resource of defending with the queen, but at some point white is opening this up on his terms. And we saw he could also just do it like this. And yeah. So white is getting everything he wants. He's getting the open file. Also we said if he takes, white is getting a huge center. So it's asking for a fight too early. It's overextending. It is shutting down this light squared bishop, but that's asking for trouble. Because white should, but didn't challenge that move. So yeah, develop. Don't put the queen on open files. rooks belong on open files, put the queen like behind a rook if possible. Develop pieces, basically, like knight f6 and a5 for the reason that we don't want this file to open. So a5 was strong here. And for a lot of moves here, a5 is a strong move because then you get to choose when you open the file. And then we got to this very interesting and critical position, I think, where black has three ideas: knight f5, e5, and a5. They're all good, they're all decent, but knight f5 does take away the chance of e5 because of the queen coming here and then this push attacking the knight as well as this pawn. So one had to be wary. So the point was, if you go e5 here, there's takes and this, which is awkward because this queen is undefended. So in a sense, this move here, knight f5, is a bit of a one-move threat. So Stockfish would say it's the equal second best or fourth best, yeah, equal second to fourth best move in the position, and the best move being a5. a5 is very stable because there's very little counterplay white can generate from a5 itself, and the only thing it can generate is some kind of counterplay down the e file. So we saw that. Okay, so we did this. He wins the exchange, and he opens up he goes for the e file push, the faster way of doing things, and then the brilliant finish, finding the fork, not the fork, the pin. So the season went off to a good start. Hi there, Queen Sky. Hi there, Skylar. Queen Sky. And in round 2, he played Yvette Nicole, so 0 against Yvette Nicole. And again, some very nice play actually from 0 in the opening. So as I was saying, 0 is a scholar of the game, so just needs to improve his certain aspects. And then the theme, I think, of this video is mostly making sure you're developing fast. But this game, one can't really fault his opening play at all. All his pieces are coming out. In fact, I think one has to question black's play here. b6 from Yvette Nicole is a problem. So black has lost his her d5 pawn. So it is true that this diagonal could be a nice juicy diagonal for the bishop at some point, but because you don't have a d5 pawn, it's important to maintain control of these light squares. So I would say the most natural move in this position is maybe e6, and at some point maybe we'll go with this b6, bishop b7 idea, maybe. But e6, just to get some more control of the light squares. Bishop d3. So let me see. So let's say this would be a kind of ideal play from black. Castles, takes. There's a little bit of a trap here. Black can't take this knight. It's a very standard trap, often in the French defense, because there's a discovered check. So if you took the knight, check, or the queen would have to just go here and get taken, or you block this check and then the queen takes this queen. So this is a slight problem. So this pawn isn't, this piece is not really hanging. So still not hanging, because if you take here, if you take here, there's now bishop takes this pawn check, winning the queen. So just standard development. Okay, what would be black's plan here? Yeah, get out the knight, get out the rook, get out the queen. Just very stable development. This would be a very nice way of playing. For black, just get out all your pieces. So challenge the center and get out all your pieces. Yeah, very nice. And don't fall for the trap. So that's what black should have done here. Okay, what else could black do? Maybe you might not like e6 because it blocks in the light squared bishop. So another move which would be quite nice is bishop here, or even bishop here. Bishop here is a very nice idea, and because then we're threatening bishop takes knight, queen takes, and winning this pawn. But hang on a second. Takes, win this pawn. Doesn't quite work, because then we win this pawn. So actually black would have to play c6, and then there's a threat on this pawn, but then white can defend against the threat. And so the game would continue something like this, and white has a choice which side to castle. Do we castle kingside or queenside? Yeah, both seem decent. Okay, so going back, since this is now looking ahead, since we have a problem with bishop takes knight, queen takes, and then this pawn not, maybe this is a nice move, c6. And again, notice it's a move controlling the light square, so that's good. And we're planning bishop g4 takes, and takes this pawn. Okay, and then that's why I would play h3 against this. I mean, there are other moves which are possible, but h3 is a kind of quite a nice way of saying, no, I don't want you coming to g4 and causing the trouble. So it looks like a move at the side of the board, but it's actually a move protecting the center. Okay, there are other moves Stockfish might recommend instead of, I think it might recommend, oh yeah, bishop c4. This is another very nice move. It says, okay, you want to come to g4? I have a little trap in store for you. Takes, and knight here, check, picking up the piece. So that would win a pawn. So the king would have to come back, and then we're winning the piece back, and we've won a pawn, and we've disrupted. We're still defending this pawn, and we've disrupted black's king. So this is very pleasant for white. So against this move here, this little subtle threat, I guess white would have to go e6. So it's because of this kind of thought process. I want to go bishop g4, but if I go bishop g4, I need to go c6. But if I go c6, there's this trap of bishop c4, that we might as well just go e6 straight away. Because white, with best play, if they're good, can force e6. Hi there, Erin is a fox. How was my day today? Good. I spent a lot of the day analysing these games by Zher, and hope they can be educational, both if he rejoins chess and also to anyone, especially to low-rated players, to make sure they get the basics right. But I think hopefully there'll be stuff useful for stronger players, and hopefully also I won't myself be over my head with tactics or strategic ideas that I miss myself. So that's the hope anyway, because I am myself just a weak board too, and so I recognise my limits. And also I don't always play these openings. So, going back to the beginning of this game, this is the round 2 game against Evert Nicole. Very nice play from Zher0's, strong play in the opening. And I was saying here, Evert Nicole made a mistake as black, playing b6. And I was saying the strongest move as black would be e6. It looks like you're blocking in the bishop, but for the reasons I gave, c6 is also decent, but with best play from white, you can force e6. Bishop g4 is decent, but again, there are, yeah. In fact, if I look at the Masters database, bishop g4 is the most common move in this position. h3 takes, and then c6. So this is the most common continuation, which is the one I showed you earlier. But e6 is very solid. Okay, however, b6 is a problem, because b6 doesn't defend the light squares. And Zher0, you're given an opportunity, you capitalize. He absolutely capitalized on this. Bishop to b5 check. The point of this move is it basically forces c6 or bishop d7 or knight f to d7, and a very cramped black position, like so after a move like bishop d7, you don't even you can just continue your I'm guessing you can just continue your development. You don't have to take, or you can take, or anything you do is rather decent. I mean, a4 is good, but c6 is you would have to back off, but then black doesn't have, I guess, bishop g4 is a possibility, bishop b7 is a possibility. Yeah, actually bishop g4 is still a decent idea, I guess, for black. So it's not the end of the world, this b6 move. Yeah, Zher0 is saying he's given up chess, but hopefully he'll come back. And he was basically, let's say, hurting from some of his losses. Having said that, his performance during the season was 2.5 out of 8, which was the same as mine. I got 2.5 out of 7 on board 2. But yeah, so actually this isn't the end. So although this is quite ugly, it's not the end of the world for black. It's the sort of thing where black could easily fight on with moves like this, h3. Now I'm just wondering, why is this pawn not hanging? So I'm not clear. Why is that pawn not hanging? So, yeah, I'm not... So on the face of it, white's just lost a pawn, but rook to d1. What do I do here? Suppose I just go here. I'm kind of not sure what I'm doing right now. I'm sort of thinking. So this would be a difficult position to play as white. I would feel this, but I wouldn't necessarily recognize, and this would be my personal weakness. I wouldn't really recognize in this position how white is really doing well, even though he's a pawn down. So like the engine is plus 2.4 for white here, recommending moves like queen to d7, and then yeah, Rusai says knight b5 is an idea in this position. In fact, the engine is coming up with all kinds of crazy stuff. It's saying stuff like bishop h6, and I'm like, what? So yeah, I'm a little bit out of my depth as to like what does that actually. I mean, I can see that if I take the bishop, I lose the knight, but I don't have to take that bishop. This is a very kind of Opperweisen-like move. So we could just move the knight out the way. What's the idea? Knight takes d5. So anyway, I'm getting distracted with stuff I didn't want to talk about, but I just realized. Okay, so the point is black is severely behind in development. Am I still playing chess here? It's like you just give away your pieces, but his position is just so open that he's in trouble. Like queen there and rook there are coming, for example. But okay, this is far too advanced, and not really what I want to talk about. The point is, black's position is a little bit ugly after b6. And Rusai says taking on d4 is just bad. Well, yeah, I guess it opens up this file, and black is not ready. It's again sort of okay, but black compounds his error by going knight b to d7. I think in this position, I'd want to face off against that bishop, so challenge that bishop. This bishop is invading the light squares. You must either play this or this. Playing with the knight invites Zher0's next move, a very good move, bishop to c6, just invading with the bishop on the light squares. Rook here. So as we see, it's a very nicely played game so far by Zher0. Like all black's pieces are confined to the first 3 rows, and his development is excellent. I mean, this is like how you'd love your game to go. Everything is. Something worth noting here is if you play e6, there's the idea of knight here, and instead of worrying about your bishop, you just back off your other bishop and threatening to come in here with the knight hitting the queen. And it's quite hard, in fact, for black to avoid, because if you do this, there's this, and yeah, so this is really... So anyway, black didn't play e6, so that was an idea if black plays e6. And in fact, the bishops were exchanged. Even better than exchanging bishops, actually, is playing this. So if bishop takes bishop, knight takes bishop with a fork, black would have to play something like queen to c8. I mean, black's position is really awful here. Takes, gets the rook out of the way, and black is just desperate to castle quickly. And what does white do? He quickly should open up this central file as quickly as possible And the problem is he's hitting the knight now. If you castle out the way, you lose the knight. There's also a nice idea, if you castle out the way, you could sack your queen and then go here, picking up the queen back again, and then take the knight. You could now at this point win the pawn, or you could threaten to win a pawn here, so that everything is collapsing. It's not. You're hitting here. You're hitting here. It's not game over, but it's a very uncomfortable position. So is there a case for knight e5 instead of bishop c6? So going all the way back here, going for the queen trap already. Yeah, that's a nice thought. So bishop b7 would still come, and then probably well, bishop c6 is still nice because then, but yeah, I'd say, okay, the bishop is also threatening this, so you want to block off this diagonal if you can. Even just castles is decent. In fact, castles is supposed to be the best move in the position, but bishop c6 is also nice. d5 maybe. So d5. Let's see, d5. I'm going to just cheat and look at the engine. a6, bishop c6. Yeah, this is very nice too. Bishop takes c6, knight takes c6. So queen c8. So that is the sort of position we're getting. Yeah. So yeah, all very nice moves. So going right back to the beginning, we see very nice play from Zher in his round 2 match. He's hitting the light squares. He's invading with his pieces. Okay, maybe bringing in the knight was stronger here, but he takes, castles, gets his king safe. Okay, so he's done all the things which we are going to say he should do in every game, which is develop all his pieces, don't overpress with the attack, just play sensible. Now he's doing just brilliant play. d5, opening the center on the uncastled king. Black does a very good move too, blocks off the file, takes, and gets out the way. Now, okay, so yeah, castles, knight d5. Okay, so knight d5 is again another very good move. Another good move in the position is obviously doubling on this file, but knight d5 is very good because if knight takes knight, we have queen takes knight. And why is that good? Because we're hitting the rook. So hang on, so if bishop takes bishop, we have a discovery on the queen, winning the queen, and then we can take our choice of the rook or the bishop. So that's, yeah, I think that's the biggest problem. And if black gets out of these discoveries, well, we're winning this bishop. We could be winning the rook. There are too many choices. So knight d5 is a very nice move. Again, so Zher playing this really nicely. It puts a lot of pressure on d7 in particular, and it can't be taken. Rook f7, that's quite a nice move from the opponent, blocking off this this diagonal. But here again, Zher found probably the best continuation, which is knight takes, rook takes, and instead of doing something silly like exchanging off rooks or something, noticing that there's a double pin. So if the knight takes the bishop, you win the queen. If the rook takes the rook, you win the queen. So we have a double pin. So this has been expert play so far. And yeah, that is bishop takes f6 is the best move. What else? I mean, if you play a move like queen e2, a lot of black's troubles are gone because he can simply go knight f8, hitting the rook, and if you take the rook, the rook is defended now, so that it sort of gives, there's lateral defense, and if you take the knight now, he can take the rook in response, and he comes out only like she would just come out a pawn down at the end of that line. So just go again. Takes the knight, takes the rook, take Desperado on there, and yeah. So bishop takes f6, the move he found is definitely the move in the position. Pawn takes, but here Zher made a bit of an error because he simply took back with the rook. So in any position, you should examine all exchanges. You should examine all checks, all exchanges, and all forcing moves. So what is black threatening? He's threatening to take my rook, so obviously a rook move is promising. Do we take the free pawn? Maybe. That's definitely a candidate move. But you should also check this exchange, takes, and then do we have any more exchanges? Do we have any more checks? And if you did just look at that for a moment, can we see a check in this position? Anyone in chat? Oh, and Numberman says, loving the detail, by the way. Okay, thank you. And Erin says, funnily enough, I love white. So who can give the move in this position? Queen d5. Exactly, just winning a whole free yummy rook. Okay, so takes, and there's nothing else. Okay, so rook takes pawn is a mistake because it's settling for a pawn, and so now white is 2 pawns up, but he could have been a rook and a pawn up, and game over. And that could be a difference, like later in the game. Okay, and then black does have defensive resources here. So, for example, queen to e8 is an example of a defensive resource, because now if you try to go here, check, and win the rook, you lose your own rook. So, yeah, the point is this knight is pinned to the queen. Get out of the pin, and the move black did doesn't get out of the pin. And again, the move is missed. Takes, and check, picking up the free rook. So you should really always check exchanges. Always check not only at what happens after the exchange, but check all possible exchanges in the next position, and all possible checks, and all possible forcing moves, like something like attacking the queen or threatening mate in 1. So those 3 things: checks, exchanges, and forcing moves. Follow those lines as deeply as you can. He turned down the exchange and played a move which looks good when you first see it, like the rook can't take that rook because it's pinned. It's a very dominating looking move, but unfortunately he's just hanging his rook. So that was a bit unfortunate. So moving the rook reveals an attack on this rook, which he just slipped. And he's lucky he gets another rook back for his rook. So he hung a rook and won a rook. Yeah, so well done both Erin and Numberman788 for spotting the fork. Okay, so we're still 2 pawns out. No worry. So this is a game in which the opening has been played actually excellently by Zher. He's developed his pieces, and yet the theme of this game will also be about developing your pieces, because there's one piece of white which hasn't been developed. So here actually black could have just gone queen takes b2 and won a couple of pawns, and this position the computer would say +1 for white, so it's still a bit of a game. Instead he went queen d6, and this is a kind of resigning a lot. I mean, it's fixing white's advantage of 2 pawns because the position is now stable, and white is 2 pawns up. I think stability is an interesting concept in chess that people don't really talk about. Whenever you take a pawn in chess, often you make your position less stable. And that's why people play gambits, because you're giving the opponent the extra pawn, but they are losing stability. And if they can stabilize with the pawn up, they will then go on to probably win the game. or the 2 pawns up, or whatever it is. So here white has a stable advantage. If black had gone takes, now there's not stability, the rook is hanging, so now the rook is protected, so you've got stability. Okay, now it's even. Now it's not completely stable because, okay, so the queen defends this pawn, but the queen is a little bit out of. The queen and the rook and the knight, they're not quite coordinated well. The queen is also on the rank of this rook, so it's not entirely stable, but white is a pawn up and should easily be able to stabilize. But after the queen d6, queen comes back to the center of the board. This is a brilliant move from Zher0 again. Where does the queen belong? Right in the center, if possible. It could always go pawn grabbing, but so, I mean, in fact, like Stockfish might say, the best move in this position is queen to a8, and if rook f8, grab this pawn. But I actually think this is a better move because the queen belongs in the center. And this is now a stable 2-pawn advantage and just should be a very, very easy conversion. And white's next plan should be to bring the rook in. And the philosophy of queen and rook is you should connect them. So that means if he had gone for queen here check, you should bring in the rook here. So the queen and the rook are both eyeing the same square. Even if you don't bring the rook and the queen to the same file, they should be eyeing the same squares, so they worked in coordination. This is why when you're checkmating, if you had a queen and a rook here, and you go rook here, queen here, they work really well when they're connected in kind of boxes, in boxy formations. Okay, so white's got a stable advantage. Goes queen to c4, king to g7. Okay, but so there's no threat. Obviously, right here there was a threat on white's queen, so he had to move it. Now white has got a free move, no threat. So I'm not even going to ask the chat what white should do here. He should bring his last piece into the game. And that's really great because then the rook might even come in here. Eventually, white's plan should just be to exchange off the majors, exchange off the queens and the rooks, and push these pawns. And it should be quite an easy conversion. Okay, so then actually, even though this is a middle game, we see the recurring pattern. Instead of developing his pieces, Zher0 made the same mistake. He goes for the attack. And it's again a knight move. So he's going for the attack with the single knight. Now the knight is a powerful piece, and he's going for this check, winning the queen. But again, this is sort of treating the opponent like a complete patzer. Like, you're not going to see my fork on your king and queen. Now, knight h4 is a very nice idea, but when you want to do this move, knight h4, you should probably think, but what is my opponent going to do in response? And give them some respect of, if my opponent is not a complete idiot, they're going to defend against my threat. And to try and think, what can they do in response? And in fact, I think what black did in the game would be a good example of what they could do in response. Queen to d2. Now, going back to this position, do we want to play this if we go queen to d2? We could go knight here check anyway. The king could move somewhere. What next? So what happened in the game is queen to d2, knight here check, king here, knight here check, king here. And at this point, Zher0 is quite concerned because this move, knight h4, is not stabilizing. White had a stable advantage, now he's got a knight on the side of the board, and he's a little bit concerned about something like, at some point, queen takes pawn defended by the rook. He shouldn't be concerned because even if the queen is defending any mating square, the king could just go into the corner. So there are two things we have to learn from here. One should definitely be concerned about queen takes f2. But one shouldn't panic. So one should calculate first, how could we stop it, and secondly, is there a mate? Okay, queen takes f2 might lose a pawn if the rook could see this. So there is some discovered attack, like that knight could move at some point, and there could be some attack on this. But even if black could take here, it's not yet mate, because the rook is covering f1, the queen is covering f1. Okay, so there's nothing yet. And if there were anything, just going back to f3 would block off this file and end any danger, and hit the queen. So you're with tempo protecting f2. And then you could say bring your rook to e1 defended by that knight. So everything is all fine. Rook can come now to e1. All your sins with knight to h4 can be forgiven. But yeah, but this f2 was scary, and Zero settled for the draw in this position. Which is purely a case of seeing something dangerous and not calculating deeply enough how to defend against that danger. So one way of defending that danger would have been simply saying, I made a mistake with knight h4, bringing the knight back here. The other way would have been going knight to e3, and realizing that even if black does move the knight with some threat here, actually his own king is too exposed. We got check, this coming in with check. I mean, there's no, if you go here, this knight would fall. So it's really, if he moves here, again, this queen here, check, here, knight here. There's nothing, you have to calculate it. So as Aaron says, I think Zero was more upset with throwing a totally winning position and took a draw as damage control. Yeah, but I would say even this is totally winning. You just exchange off the queens, exchange off the rooks. 2 pawns is totally winning. I mean, you just need to activate your pieces. And this king all the while is very weak. Yeah, it happens. But the point is, you should be on both sides of that. So sometimes you can be fighting back and winning a lost position. Sometimes you're going to be losing 1 positions or drawing 1 positions. That's fine. But this, to me, okay, yes, there's a slight element. To me, this is fear. He's afraid of losing. And the answer to that fear is cool, calm calculation. So Queen Sky, yeah, you can link stuff, but I won't be able to go into it now because I've got 8 games to cover, and I'm probably not doing very well in terms of time. So yes, so Owen says, having a bad mindset messes with your judgment. Okay, so this is the thing. If you're afraid, you're not going to be a good judge. If you should be, certainly you need to be concerned. F2 is definitely something you should be concerned about. But if you're panicking about it, you're not going to be a good judge. If you're feeling you were winning and now you're not, or yeah, absolutely. If so that's sort of expectations of how the game should be. If you're upset, I mean, the point is, I think, if you're upset that the opponent didn't fall for your fork, I think that's yeah, that's going to be darn. They saw my trap. And so I showed some of these games to Upper Wazen, as I said earlier, and he said, one of the things he said is he should be developing his pieces better in the opening. This wasn't a problem this game, but at the end it was a problem. He needed to bring his last piece into the attack. And in fact, usually a good rule of thumb when you're attacking is you need 3 pieces. Well, here you only have 3 pieces. White needs his last piece, so 2 pieces. Queen and knight on their own can't do that much. So sort of a rule of thumb. Usually you need about 3 pieces to do anything interesting. It's not like it's not hard and fast rule, but And that wasn't what I was going to say. What was I going to say? I was going to say something else. So yeah, you need to bring your pieces in, but there was something else I wanted to say. Yeah, this is nice, pinning the rook. So it couldn't move, and now is really the time to bring that rook in. And this is just a very beautiful position for white in complete control. And yeah, that's what he said. He's going this move like knight here. It wasn't this particular position, but so opponent said it's like someone trying to play their father or their brother. They want to They want to win quickly. So it's a little bit expecting to win quickly, expecting to wipe to wipe the floor against the opponent. They're just going to walk into every trap I set for them, and so on. Whereas what you should be doing with each of the moves you play is thinking, what would I do if I were black against that move? And is that really going to help my position, having my knight on the side of the board? If, say, I do play a move, knight h4, queen d2, what next? So that would be the point where you just say, I made a mistake, bring the knight back. So knight h4 is fine, set the opponent to trap, why not? But you have to be able to say, okay, I made a mistake, if the opponent sees the trap. Ryusai says the lesson to be learned from this game, from Queen Sky's game, or this game, is that the queen d8 line is too passive and queen d6 is to be preferred. Queen to d6 here. Yeah, well, I'm not a Scandinavian expert, but that's interesting for those who know the Scandi. Yeah, he got tilted and thought f2 was dangerous. Yeah, so if you want to, absolutely, but if you're going to see if it is dangerous or not dangerous, the only way you can tell is by calculating. Just calculating concrete lines. Because chess is not some vague, it's definitely, this is something to be concerned about, and so we need to calculate what concretely can I do to stop it being dangerous. And the first thing is block the file. The second thing is counterattack. And the third thing is, well, what if he takes on f2? It's not checkmate. So maybe I can checkmate my opponent. In the meantime, even just making a move like rook f1, I mean, there are all kinds of moves one can do. White isn't in a hurry. Okay, so that was a draw, still. Off to a good start to the season, 1.5 out of 2. But round 3, Zher was up against a very good opponent. He played very, very well. So got that Plymouth Rock, really plays very nice chess. So let's go slowly. d4, d5. Oh, we have another Queen's Gambit setup. Knight c3. Okay, now we saw earlier c5 would be a reasonable move to play at some point to challenge the center. Apart from that move, we should be developing all our pieces. Zher is Zher0, and the league is a 45 plus 45 where you play one game. Yeah, thanks for putting the link. One game every week. Season 17 is about to start, so if someone can link the registration for season 17, that would be great. Okay, knight f6. So we have a Queen's Gambit declined. We're not going to accept the gambit and take on c4, which is wise. You don't really want to accept the Queen's Gambit usually, but some people do. Takes, and e4, takes, and takes. So nothing I can say, nothing I can fault about Zher0's play so far. c5, again, it's a very nice idea. Is you challenge the center and you want to push c5 before you play knight c6. So very nice play. Knight f3, because at the moment white's got a huge center. Okay, but now at this point, why did we play c5? Just again. So our idea for playing c5 was that if white took, we would take here, takes here, take here, and black's completely winning. He's threatening here, he's going to castle, the white king can't castle, everything's just beautiful. Okay, what else could white do against c5? The other thing he could do is push. And if he pushes, takes, now you might be a little bit concerned here because this pawn will push and white will have a protected passer. However, you can blockade the passer, for starters, and you can, at some point, push a6, b5, and although it looks like he has a protected passer, this is not a support. Even when he pushes this pawn, it's not a supported pawn chain. So actually, although it looks slightly scary, it would actually be a very weak protected passer. At some point, this is coming, and this pawn is actually going to be a weakness. Okay, so those are the two of the options we said were he doesn't want to take, he doesn't want to push. I mean, he could push, it's still an equal position, so it's not wrong to push. It's just, it's not an advantage. And he played this, defending it. Well, we have to then remember, why did we play c5 in the first place? We played it because we want to take. We want to exchange our c pawn with their d pawn. So why not take it? So that was the move. Takes. Instead, what was played in the game was bishop to e7, this, then takes, and then bishop to b4. Okay, so this is obviously a mistake because the bishop has just moved twice in the opening. He should have done exactly that move, but this, and then bishop to b4. And now bishop to d2, takes. So this is a very well-known. This is like it's been played over 1,000 times by masters in the Lichess in the masters database. Black will castle, white will grab that open file. Because this pawn is blocking in the bishop, you'll fianchetto the bishop, might reroute the knight to put pressure on this pawn, and if he pushes that pawn, bring the knight into here. Takes. I mean, this is an example. So queen here would be nice just to put pressure on this pawn here, but also to leave a space for the rook to come in. So this would be just very nice play. You might do, and this is just a sample. I mean, we're probably outside Masters database now. Just put pressure on here. You could hit this rook, and then he has to go back, and then we just go back. So I mean, this would be an example to show it's a very drawn position. That could already be a draw by repetition in this position. Neither side can make progress particularly easily. Of course, anything could happen in a game, but neither side has an advantage. So takes. Everything is good, but if you do this and then this, you've lost one tempo. And now probably the best move is still just to take and castle, but because you've lost a tempo, your white might have a slight edge, but it's very minor. But the move Zher played is bringing his queen out, and I think there's been a pattern in these games is moving the queen before moving the queen side. So the queen side pieces still haven't developed, and you move the queen out. So it's like it's asking for bringing the queen out. You're asking for the fight, but you haven't got your pieces out ready for the fight. And this is the recurring theme that that I only really noticed with the help of some discussion with Opperwezen, the Dutch international master, who had a look at a few of these games and just gave me some tips for things to point out in particular from these games. But that was the one recurring theme. So queen to a5 is a mistake because he should just take and castle. White, on the other hand, has now completed his development, and black, instead of continuing to develop, so again, just taking would be fine. Just have a huge exchange, castle, even yeah, even knight c6 apparently is not so good in this position, because why is it not good? So apparently white can just go here and try. I think he's going for not quite sure. Going for here and this. So white, yeah, I think white is. So really, the best thing here is just to take everything apparently and go for and try and quickly develop your queen side before you get run over. But yeah, going for the attack when you're not ready for the attack was a bit of a problem. In fact, here the best move is just to take, and then rook b1. But we saw it a move later. Takes, rook b1, and white is winning a pawn. Okay. Now, in this position, so white has played very well. He's developed. He's now a pawn up. But black is not lost yet. But black does need to develop quickly. So actually a brilliant move from Zher0. Bishop d7, a brilliant move because if you take, knight takes, and you've developed two pieces in 2 moves, it's very fast development. And again, a very good move from the opponent. They got that Plymouth Rock. He doesn't fall into that. So if he had taken, takes, I think black is already a kind of a okay. Stockfish doesn't agree. Stockfish says it's plus 1.6, but I think yeah, black's at least completed his development here and is not feeling too bad about himself. Okay, he is a pawn down, so that's why. But an even better move from got that Plymouth Rock. He played this, takes, and the reason it's such a good move, especially, oh yes, because the other really good move in this position is this move. And the reason why both the move that got that Plymouth Rock and this move are so great is they both hit the c6 square, and they stop the black knight from developing to c6. And so this knight, if you can't develop this knight, it means you can't connect your rooks, it means you can't complete your development. So this is also very good because this knight is not developing very easily, and the best thing even to do here is actually just for white is to do this, threatening to push, and now that is a powerful protected passer, which is going to get support. It's going to have a whole pawn chain behind it. So that's real trouble. So you might take, the queen's under attack, and then blockade that pawn, but white is really doing very nicely here. But okay, instead of this, got another very nice move is this, knight to e5. And there's a trap in this position. So black should have played knight to a6 to here, and even that is not that great because the rook will pin the knight, and in fact that's trouble as well. So in fact the best move is go queen d6 defending the knight, but knight d7 falls for a trap. So you can't go to c6 because the knight will take it, and why can't you go to d7? Anyone in chat, what is the problem with knight d7? Rook to b7, very nice. Got that Plymouth Rock, saw it, and played it, but we can just defend. So what now? What does white play now? Queen a4, you suggest? Queen a4. There's a sneaky move. Yeah, you mean queen a4. There's a sneaky move against queen a4. So queen a4 is a nice idea, but black has a very sneaky... Can anyone in chat see what black can do to protect this knight? Yeah. So the point is you could move... you could move the knight so it attacks the queen. This is good, but then he's got this. But yeah, this is, and you can then get out of the way. Even more powerful is this, because then the queen. Let me see. Can the queen do anything? Yeah, because now you're threatening queen takes rook. If you try, you can't defend this rook, and if you take the knight, I'm taking your rook. So knight c5 is even stronger because it hits the rook as well as the queen. So the best white would have then is to take the queen, takes the queen. So white is still doing very nicely because this knight's at the edge of the board and so on. So it means that queen a4 is not the best. But that's a nice tactic. Why can't he rook takes e7 and then take f7? Yeah, okay, so yeah, he can. Rook takes e7, takes, that's why, yeah, rook takes f7. Okay, but then I'm worried about this. But yeah, I can just take this, and it's not the end of the world. We haven't, but there's a way of winning the piece in this position instead of doing no. Okay, I just showed it. Okay, so the move which was found by Got That Plymouth Rock is this. So just going right back to the beginning again. How smart was this move? Knight here. Got to give props to Got That Plymouth Rock for seeing that, because after this exchange, the knight can't develop to c6. If it develops to a6, there are all kinds of problems with we said this, and pinning it this way. So it goes here, but then there's this, and you defend it, and then there's this. And you're losing that, and you're losing a pawn. Okay, so it must have been a bit dispiriting at this point for Zero. That was some really awesome play from Got That Plymouth Rock. But again, he goes for these knight move, which is a little bit of a let's see if you're a patzer move. And unfortunately, even board 8s in the league are not patzers, and they're not going to fall for what he was going for, which is if you take the knight, I meet you. So it's quite a sweet idea because it's a nice way of developing the knight. Probably the move I would do in this position is knight to b8. It's sort of respecting your opponent, is not going to, and then you come to c6 and hit this pawn, and then you're also hitting the rook. But honestly, this position is difficult because the exchange is powerful. I mean, rooks are much more powerful than knights in this position because it's an open position. There are lots of open files, and this pawn is probably queening as well. So objectively, this is lost regardless. So maybe go for a cheapo. So he did this, and then he did this, and then resigned. So can you see why he resigned straight away in this position? I mean, it's because his whole idea was based upon pawn takes knight, and pawn takes knight doesn't work anymore, basically. Black to play, yeah, even if you come back, white's got this, and even if you try and block the pawn, this is, white is queening. So it's fair enough to resign here, but black has lost hope in this position, although maybe if I were black, I'd wait for white to find the pawn takes knight move before resigning. But yeah, hats off to the opponent for playing a very good game. And what can we learn as black from this game? So here, all the play is excellent so far, except the reason we play c5 is to take on d4, so we don't want to move the bishop. This is very normal in a lot of positions. Usually you take on d4 before moving that bishop, otherwise you'll waste tempo. And so you should have gone for this. And this is a very, then fianchetted that bishop. This is a very stable position. Many grandmasters and international masters have played along these lines. So it's very, very stable, nice way to play. Nothing fancy though. It's not hard to go for a win in these sorts of positions. But anything can happen. Okay, and now in round 4, so instead, once, yes, so should have taken on that because lost the tempo, and then the second thing is develop. Don't move the queen, and definitely don't move pawns going for an attack until you're ready for a fight. If you're not ready for the fight, develop your own pieces first. Bring all your pieces in, coordinate them all, and only then attack. Okay, so in round 4, Zero was white against N4SE, and this is another of these games where hats off to the opponent for playing extremely well. And yet, however, there's still a lot we can learn as white in this position. So in fact, in this game, the opponent made no inaccuracies, no mistakes, and no blunders, but played a rather strange opening setup with this c5, d6, e5. Very unusual. If I was to open up the opening database, I wouldn't say it's never been played before at the Masters level. So we see a couple of dozen games with this setup. But it's rather a strange setup because the bishop is a bit shut in. And even if it fianchettos, it's still shut in. So it definitely looks like a setup going for a solid position. Maybe just going for a closed, closed draw or something. But okay, Zero is up for a fight. Obviously, he wants to break open the position. So goes straight away with d4, which is very good. Bishop g4 was played. So that's good, but probably also good is takes. Yeah, takes. Notice that this pawn isn't hanging because there's a mate threat. So yeah, not much else. Oh, something else worth saying actually is if Queen c7 defending the mate threat, d5, knight d4. Okay, so this would be the kind of setup you'd have. You bring out the knight, you bring out the bishop, you castle, you bring out the rook. Okay, so it's white's got a slight edge, slight space advantage. Bringing your rook to the open file and just playing sensible stuff. But black opted to go for bishop g4 immediately, and yeah, what's his reasoning? His reasoning is to target the center. He's got 1, 2, 3 pieces targeting d4, and now he's trying to undermine the piece protecting d4. Bongran says, I really appreciate your analysis. Who is Zero? Zero is a board 8 player in the Lichess4545 league. I am a board 2 player in the Lichess4545 league, and I was his teammate. And we are analysing, and he's given up chess, but maybe he'll be back because he was disappointed with his play in the league, and so this is to try and learn from the mistakes. So hopefully he can see that he's a much stronger player than his rating, but maybe he was making some beginner type mistakes in not bringing out his pieces and not. He's a really good chess player, he's a scholar of the game, he knows all the openings, he knows all the endgames, he knows all the tactics, and yet he sometimes doesn't do the basic things correctly. So he wasn't putting things into practice correctly. So it's to try and just try and cover the basics. Okay, so in this position, what should we do? So if I got this position, I would just go d5 straight away. And I would feel I've got a huge space advantage in the center. I've got nice development. Black's all cramped and can't do anything. But actually, when I look at it a bit deeper, the lines, and I can show you some lines. I mean, white isn't crushing here by any means. Black's position is cramped, so black has to play quite accurately, but there are many just sensible play and he'll be completely fine. So knight is attacked, he has to go back. Maybe quite a nice move is black's good. This is black's good bishop because his pawns are on dark squares. So you can, and this is white's bad bishops, and you can force the exchange. So these are all things which made me think, ah, white should be easily winning here. And Erin says, this looks like a good check Benoni since white hasn't committed c4. And RSK Ashers also says, yeah, bishop b5 check was nice. Yeah, it is nice. So I really thought, yeah, this should be really good for white. Okay. So, and just to go back, so d5, I would instantly play d5. I just feel the position demands d5 in this position. Black is putting all this pressure on the d4 pawn. So just close it up and refuse. Yeah, and the move he did play was queen b3. So, and I think this is to do with you have to let the position guide. You can't say, I don't like closed positions, so I'm never going to close the position. Sometimes a position asks for to be played in a certain way. Now, having said that, having said that, I think what he did. So just a note: you can't play this, or can you? So against this, just bishop e2 and the knight looks a bit silly on the side of the board. I just wanted to say that quickly. Yeah, so you have to back off, and then this exchange. Okay, yeah, so in this position, what should white's plan be? Okay, so, and RSK Asher says, not sure about adding a4 here. Yeah, so that's what I'm wondering here. So a4, what is the idea of a4? The idea of a4 would be at some point also to even go a5 potentially, and so that stops. So we could take en passant here or open up the a file, but we're not. I'm not sure if we're quite ready for that. And Erin says, I like a4 before bishop takes d7. Yeah, so apparently a4 is strong here. So the idea is, if the bishop ever takes, we are opening up the file for our rook. Yeah, so this is actually supposed to be good. And c4 apparently is good as well. But yeah, a4, c4, these are all nice. But just to look at this a little bit deeper. See, maybe this is a fault in my understanding, because I'm feeling like this pawn is a bit of a target. And so I want to play b4 at some point, but not yet, because, so you have to say, if things are exchanged here, that would only benefit black. Black would have a rook already ready to take over the c file. So, but I still feel it's an idea in the position for white at some point to go b4, yeah, and indeed a4. So okay, so go castles. So how does white continue? So I think white isn't really ready yet to launch an attack. a4 is a quite good move just to set, just to discourage b5 and to kind of lay out, you know, to take control of that b5 square. But castles is good. Knight f6. He's hitting the e4 pawn, so we need to defend it either with the rook or with the knight. Knight to g6. Okay, so black, if we're just following this through, black is actually doing okay. And so there we see the a4 move, castles. So although white has got a very pleasant position, I was actually struggling as white, how do I actually make progress here? And I was thinking knight c4, rook a to b8 might be an idea, queen to d3. And so black's idea is quite simple. He just wants to get the knight out the way to either a5 or here, and then just push this pawn. Knight to e3 is a good way of stopping him ever pushing that pawn. Oh, gosh. So just to go through this, knight to e3. Okay, that knight could go here, attacking the queen. Okay, so if ever the queens are swapped off, that's opening up the a file, and we're getting play from that. Knight to c8. Knight to f5, hitting the bishop, so defends the bishop. And now there's a little nasty idea of takes pawn, takes knight, which is in the air. And the reason for this move is that if you do take if you do take the pawn, I have this move g4 hitting the knight, and this is going a bit deep, but just you'd actually win a piece. Whereas that wouldn't work when the queen is off on b4, because so if you say did a move like this, knight takes pawn, b4, the knight can then move a second time, hitting the queen. So there is a weird tactic here of taking this pawn and then winning that knight, and because the queen is within a knight's distance away from this d5 square, this tactic works. So queen f1 is a strong move in this position for that reason. Okay, so all that aside, knights. So yeah, so if you, I'm sorry. So I was saying if you did knight takes e5 now, this doesn't work. There's no queen to hit. So knight f6 takes b3. Now, so the pawn here is defended. So I'm trying to remember why am I doing this variation again? Okay, yeah. So we're pushing f3 to defend e4. Develop the knight. Okay, this is just an example of maybe how you could progress in this kind of closed position. And again, yeah, okay, so we get to this position. I think this is actually quite an interesting position and I've just deleted all the markings I made. And black has got two plans in this position, knight e8 and f5, and the other rook to c8 and some play down the c file. I think the play down the c file is more defensive because white is the one with the queenside attack, and knight e8 f5 is more aggressive. So I'm sorry if I'm going quite deep into this. We could have had a closed variation here. Now, if black is just aggressive, white is so both sides kind of ignoring each other, pretty much. So actually, we're going to defend that. It's going to be stronger than completely ignoring. Okay, that's not ignoring at all. So I'm sorry, this is not what I was expecting. Whereas if rook to c8, yeah, this is an idea I was thinking. Going here, blocking off the pawn on a dark square, and then pushing. Yeah, sorry, this is what I meant to say. So if black just focuses on what white is planning, so tries to do this, then white can actually make quite a lot of progress on the queen side. So in this sort of position, black is fine, but he must start his own attack. So I think rook c8 would be a mistake. I think he has to make moves like knight e8 and starting his own attack. And in this sort of position, white then has to get distracted by black's attack a little bit. And I feel this is quite this is more a double-edged position, maybe even equal. Now going back to rook to c8, I wasn't seeing bishop takes b6. So bishop takes b6 wasn't the idea. The idea is more just yeah. So the bishop is not it's not threatening to take b6. It's more the point was the pawns are on dark squares, which enables us to make progress on b6. But oh yes, there is actually bishop takes b6 as an idea in the position as well. But then we'd lose two pieces for the rook. So I'm not saying that's so. Yeah, I mean if the knight king goes here, yeah, bishop takes b6 wouldn't be that strong a move. Yeah, so white would be quite happy with bishop takes b6. But my point of making the arrow was more to say the pawns are on dark squares, and yeah, you're fixing this pawn on a dark square. That's what I meant by this arrow, rather than that we want to take it. Take twice, we get two connected pass pawns. Yeah, that's true, we do. Fox Anonymous says, is Zero here? No, he's given up chess, and hopefully he'll see this video at some point in the near future and come back to chess. Um, so it's more that, yeah, if black just tries to defend, this is the sort of position where if you just try and defend, you're actually going to get steamrolled. And I feel black would be losing quite quickly. Whereas if you do your own counterattack, white has to suddenly get distracted by dealing with these threats. Yeah, you can't get on with what you want to do, basically. So it's one of like in the King's Indian. And Fox Anonymous says, nah, he'll come back. Send him some love. Yeah, that's what this stream is about. And yeah, I'm sure he will come back. But he's hurting from his losses. And so what we're doing is we're going through some of these games. He got 2.5 out of 8, which he was disappointed by. He was the captain of our team. But I mean, I myself only got 2.5 on board 2. But I think it was the manner of his losses. He ran into quite a few players just making no mistakes, no blunders. And I think it's because, and this is in particular a very good example of that, this game the opponent made no inaccuracies, no mistakes, no blunders. But as we'll see, it was not because the opponent found amazing tactics to win. There's a little bit of self-destruct going on. So going back to the initial position, there's a huge amount of pressure on d4. We should close it up and play a closed position, I would say. It's going to be a tough game, and one would have to learn how to play this kind of game, where white would be probably mainly attacking on the queen side, and black needs to find some kind of counterplay on the king side. That was the point of that whole discussion. It was quite a little bit complicated. But what he went for is he was already going for an attack. This looks like a quite pretty move because it's hitting 2 weak squares at once, f7 and b7. So yeah, but this opponent made no inaccuracies, but I can guarantee you he didn't cheat. This is the reason he made no inaccuracies, no mistakes, no blunders is a sort of, as you'll see in this game, there's going to be self-destruction, and it's not that the opponent was playing out of his skin, it's that he was forcing the opponent to play the only good move in the position. So yeah, so you might go for this, but it doesn't work because of this. You could just throw in this check as well and get the queen here. The knight can't take because it's pinned. If you try and chuck it out, takes. If you did take with the pawn, then black is in some very serious trouble because of knight h4 coming in here, and then the queen is threatening checkmate on e6 because you're blocking the bishop's defense. If you don't go there, you've also got this check, winning the rook. This is game over. So that doesn't work. In fact, the best move for black here is takes here with the king, and then withdrawing with the bishop, making sure you guard this square, and coming in with but then yeah, this pawn is falling, and it's not pretty. So yeah, but there is a move that there is more than one move that defends both these pawns. In fact, any queen move here is going to defend both of those weaknesses at once. So yeah, so this is so what it is, the problem is by moving the queen here, we've let go of our control of this square a little bit, but we've gone for a counterattack. And what we see a lot in Zher0's games is he goes for a counterattack, and that's great if you can push the counterattack to its conclusion, but if you don't, then okay, so what now? What now? So what should white do now? So both of his threats are gone. I mean, so the problem is there's a lot of pressure on here. So we could just take, and protect this knight. That would be yeah, that would be probably a reasonable way to continue. and so Fox Anonymous, you're not Program Fox. I assumed you were Program Fox. So if you were Program Fox, you would know who I was. But obviously you're not Program Fox then. Okay. Okay. So yeah. So that'll probably be kind of bail out. This pressure is too great and to take. But okay. So the move he went for instead is he presses the attack again. And yeah, knight g5. And we've seen this in a lot of the previous games. You're pressing an attack, and if black has no defense against this attack, like in Crazy House, this would be lethal. Like even if black were to defend this, you'd probably just sack everything on f7, and you'd have all these pieces in hand, and yeah, it would be a lethal attack. Unfortunately, black does have one very good move which defends, which then makes the knight on g5 look a bit silly because this square has been left undefended. And then if I was left in this position, I'd have to say, okay, try and do d5 now. Okay, I'm going to lose my bishop. I can do this little combination like this, and I'm not doing too badly. Maybe black is slightly better, but everything's okay. The reason why black is slightly better is this knight is horribly misplaced. I mean, it could go back here and get double pawns, or it has to go back here, and it's got a long journey back. Knight g5 is bad. Yes, this is what we're trying to say. In a lot of these games, it's going for a one-move threat. If there were no defense, it would be a good move, but you have to give respect to your opponents and assume they're going to find the best defense. And it's not that the opponent's an excellent player, it's that the opponent is forced to find the only move that defends against that threat in a decent way. I mean, knight h6 also works, but it's not very pretty. This is a very pretty defense. And now white just castles, ignoring the fact that there's a huge weakness here. So he probably should have tried to clear out that weakness before castling, but because now he's losing a pawn, and his queen is under attack. So that must have been quite disappointing in the game because we had all this attack and it's failed, and this is a sort of position where you have to realize we haven't got what we wanted in a way, and we just have to find the least worst moves. Exactly. So Fox Anonymous, you've basically just straight hit upon the theme of this entire stream, which is you have to develop your pieces before going into beast mode, into attack mode. And Zher0 just goes straight into attack mode. He hasn't developed his pieces. He's only just now castled after things have gone a bit wrong. And this is the theme of the stream, and it's because I discussed some of Zher0's games with Opperweisen, and this is what Opperweisen's hit upon straight away. He said there's a Dutch coach who says, bring your friends to the party. So you bring all your pieces in and then attack. And then he told it to me what it was in Dutch. And I wrote it in the comments somewhere, so maybe I'll share that at some point. Now this is a really quite tricky position for white because his attack has kind of faltered, and he now has to find a square for his queen. And accurate play is required. There are a few moves. Queen h3, I think, would be what I would do. And the reason for that is this knight is out of position. Let's get it back into some kind of life with tempo. So queen takes queen, knight takes, and so on. Another move, apparently, queen e3 might also work. Queen g3 is also good. The bishop's defending against the knight fork on e2. But the move he played, queen d3, is trouble. And it's trouble because it blocks off the bishop's defense of e2. And as I said, the psychology probably wasn't good in this position. You're already losing, and maybe his hopes of this at some point, if you deflect the knight and then get some kind of pin of the queen and the king, but it's just it's just walking straight into a tactic for black. Okay, so now not only is our attack faltered, but we've suddenly run into an attack of our opponent. And this is really a key point, is that when you're losing, you can still need to hunker down and find the least bad solution. The least bad move in the position. So we could give away our queen for 2 pieces. That might be one thing we could do. Take like queen takes knight here and here. I mean, it's not ideal, but black's pawn structure is a bit rubbish. Maybe it's obviously losing for white, but maybe there's still some hope. But in the losing position, white went all in with bishop takes f7 check. Okay, fair enough. Queen takes bishop. And now in this position, again, you have to think, do we want to take the queen or do we want to go desperado with our queen? And just to say, if we do go desperado with our queen, takes, if he takes, we can save our rook. If he takes our rook, we can win his rook. And then the bishop escapes. So either way, what's the situation? The match situation is we've got 3 pieces against 3 pieces, but this piece is going to die. So either way, we're going to be a piece down in this position. And if we go like this, again, we've got 2 pieces against 3 pieces, so we're going to be a piece down. So whatever happens, it looks like we're going to be a piece down if we go desperado. If we go desperado on his knight, but what Zher0 played in this, so this really is a case of calculation. You're completely losing. You still really need to calculate the least worst option. Yeah, hi Fox Anonymous. Yes, we know each other. So what Zher0 did is knight takes queen, and the problem with this, it's a little bit subtle. It comes a little bit down the line. Is knight takes queen, bishop takes queen, knight takes rook, bishop takes rook. You take the bishop, and there's a sting in the tail. You thought you were done. You thought you were a piece down, and then that knight, which you didn't go desperado on, comes into c2 and grabs another of your pieces. And yeah, I'm still playing 45-45. And this is close to game over now. We're not just 1 piece down, we're 2 pieces down, and we can't even trap that knight. So the rest of the game is more just doing our best. The rook has penned us back to the back rank. The bishop is now going to come and take this piece. So we have our knights are forked. So we get our knight out actually. That's nice. But then we fall in for this check, winning the bishop. And at this point, Zher0 resigned. And this was a game, no mistakes at all from the opponent, no inaccuracies, no mistakes, no blunders. But I think we can all agree it's not because the opponent is some kind of engine. The opponent didn't do anything, didn't find some amazing tactic in this game. So actually, in some of these other games, we're saying we see the opponents played really nice chess. It's not that the opponent didn't play nice chess. It's the opponent was forced every move to find like the almost forcing move. So here, almost forced. He's almost forced to find the best move. It's not, and yeah, kudos to him. He did find pretty much the best move in almost every move of this game. But it's almost because he was forced to find the best move by Zher0's play. So Fox Anonymous says, I drew the number 2 of the ladder in classical last week. The guy was 2475. I was like a kid at Christmas. That's very nice. And he likes my voice, so thanks. Okay, so that was game 4. So at this point, Zher0 is quite unfortunate. He just lost 2 in a row. Not feeling too good about himself. And he goes into game 3, and it's another tough one. Really nice play from the opponent here. Okay, so in this game, Zero plays King's Indian. Not sure if he's played it that often before. Just to say, more classical King's Indian would be e5, castles, knight c6, knight e1, bringing the bishop here, and then f3 just in time to slide back, and bringing the rook c1 and pushing. So this would be a kind of classical setup. Black's plan is to attack on the king side. The most important piece in Black's attack is actually this bishop, because White would love to just go h3 and block off any advance, but this bishop at some point can sacrifice itself on h3, and this is why this bishop should never be exchanged. This is the most important piece in Black's attack. This bishop, on the other hand, is pretty useless because it's blocked in by a row of pawns. But this bishop is actually quite a good defender. I mean, this is just vague generalities. Now, something of interest is if you play bishop e3 as so early, before the knight has moved out of the way, you do run into what happened in the game, knight to g4. So I just wanted to point out how in the classical King's Indian that's actually that's avoided. But this is also I think queen d2 isn't theory. If I just open up the opening database, I mean castles here has been played a lot. There's nothing wrong with knight g4, and the bishop usually you don't want to swap this bishop, so usually you just back off or move. You could even move the bishop. So yeah, so knight g4. You could even, for example, in here, move the bishop here. Just you don't really want to swap off this bishop if you can help it, because this is if you could swap it off for Black's dark squared bishop, maybe you would, to try and get in on the dark squares in Black's position. But okay, so Zero is actually quite smart here. He doesn't want to swap off that bishop. He recognizes it's a good piece, but he doesn't move it to a good square, because straight away he's losing a tempo with this move, and he has to move it again, and then he has to move it again. So he's lost a lot of time. But fair play to his opponent for playing very accurately. Okay, castles. And now it's so easy for all of us to miss this. Okay, he plays d5. Maybe the plan is to go, king b1, rook c1, get some play down the c file maybe at some point, or else if there's an exchange on c takes d. If there isn't, maybe some play on d6. Was there d takes e5 before castles? D takes e5, d takes e5, and then castles, you mean? Sorry. Yeah, so, okay, I'm sorry if I went too fast. So this is the position here. So you got 1, 2, 3, 4 defenders of that pawn, and only 1, 2, 3 attackers. So yeah, it's defended fine, and now it's really defended fine. And what did Black play in this position after d5? Anyone in the chat? Find Black's move. And then there's going to be a follow-up puzzle. So what's the best line, basically, in this position is going to be the full. Number man 768 is first, bishop h6. Like, I have to admit, when I was playing through the game, I didn't spot bishop h6 myself coming, but I would have naturally wanted to get the king out the way quickly before playing d5, because I want to get the rook onto this file. So I probably wouldn't have fallen for it, but not because I saw bishop h6. Bishop h6, very good. Now, what should White play? Now, this is exactly the point where you're losing. You just realized you've just screwed up the game. What do you do? And this is actually the most important thing, one of the most important things I want to. So not only, the first lesson of this video is develop your pieces, all your pieces before attacking, don't waste time. But the second one is, okay, you've made a mistake, you're losing. you can still calculate the least bad option. So what is the best defense for white? And I don't think, and basically, even if you're losing, you need to take the time to find the move that loses the least, because it could be the difference between a game which goes completely outside of your control and you lose in a few moves, or a game which, yeah, you lose eventually, or you might squeak a draw in the end, or you might be able to fight back into it. If you really take the time and just lose as little material as you can. So what's the best defense for white? Basically, when we do puzzles on Lichess and so on, we're always about puzzles to win, but it's also important the puzzles to lose the least. Fox Anonymous says, best defense, resign and go watch OK stream. Erin says, bishop g5. Okay, so why bishop g5? What does black do after bishop g5? Yeah, so bishop g5, if you just take it to try and renew the pin, oh, you haven't gained anything. If you take it with the knight, yeah, you can just get out of the way. And if he takes you, you can suddenly go and take that bishop. So suddenly things are a bit complicated. You have to do something like this. Okay, but then we just sidestep. Okay, so he has one apiece. And what to do if he goes pawn takes? That's the... Well, actually, there are a few moves. Again, you could just go king b1. G4, yeah. G4 would be the most natural looking move. Just seal that diagonal. Okay, we've lost a piece, but that's it. So you stop the bleeding. Unfortunately, what Zero... So losing the queen, I can completely understand losing the queen. That can happen to anyone. What hurts more in a way is Zer's next move is he played knight in the way. And then immediately resigned because he saw it just didn't work. Because you take here, and when you move out of the way, he takes again. And he must have seen this was coming. He's not losing a piece, he's losing two pieces. And so he just played knight here and then resigned when he realized just this isn't working. Whereas in a piece down position, still anything could happen. In a piece down position, you try and launch a counterattack. You're a piece down, but you coordinate all your pieces and try and attack your opponent. Erin is saying, I'm starting to think Zero has an issue getting tilted and resigning after getting tilted. Really, just starting. So yeah, we've been his teammates all season, so I think we've noticed this pattern. But and it's because he's hurting. He thought he was winning. He's expecting to win. He doesn't want to let the team down, and he's hurting basically at this point. He sees his queen. He's literally hurting. His queen is pinned, and he stops calculating. As Fox Anonymous says, he needs our love. Pethidine says, plan to get a meditation app. That's a bit. It's more about not taking it personally. Like, so I told Opera about this, and he said, yeah, he was quite jealous when he can see 1600s at the club who lose and are then just laughing away afterwards, and they don't mind. Whereas for himself, Opera weighs and says, yeah, if he loses a game, he can really feel bad about it. Fox Anonymous says, tell him to talk with Gokuba. He'll feel better after that. Yeah. And yeah, and then Opera just said, yeah, it is hurt, but just try and take a break and learn the lessons from the loss, and yeah, the pain will pass. Okay, so that was now 3 losses in a row. So pretty hard on Zero. So he goes into round 6 as black, and we have another Sicilian. D6. Now I don't play the Sicilian myself, but when I see the move D6, because we were discussing pawn structure and developing, this feels like you're blocking in the dark squared bishop. So just my hunch is I'm going to have to develop that with the fianchetto, knight f6, castles, and have this kind of setup. DMSA also says 2 losses. No, because rounds 3, 4, and 5 against were all losses, and all against like 3 and 5 were both very well played by the opponent, and 4 was sort of self-destruct. So this game, d4. Just one moment. I'm streaming right now. So yeah, so d4. Okay, so that's good. So he takes on d4. I guess I'm learning the lesson from the previous game, where he played c5 and then didn't. He didn't take on d4. Okay, it doesn't give black any advantage because you're just exchanging your c pawn for white's c pawn. So knight f6. Okay, so I'm still imagining there's going to be some kind of fianchetto, but let's see what happens. Bishop to d7, bishop to c4. Okay, so actually in this position, white misses a bit. White misses an opportunity to really press an advantage, and the way to do that would be with e5, because it's opening up the center when black is still underdeveloped and not ready. So takes, and this knight has nowhere to go. So it can't go here or here. It would have to go here. And let me see. Could the knight be hit? Oh, yes, sorry. So it can go here with an attack on this pawn. But white can defend that. Okay, and so the threat is to kick that knight. Yeah, and so actually there's one move for black which I just showed, which will hold this position for black. So takes here, and that move is g5, because if you just back off and go here, now you've got 3 things hitting on here, hitting on this pawn, and you can just take everything. And there is actually this. I went too quickly, but you can win this pawn. But at the end of it, white actually has a sacrifice to win back the pawn, like so. And okay, so material is even. Black's king, let's say, is not ideal, but it's not the end of the world. Definitely not the end of the game. Stockfish even says only plus 0.5, so Stockfish is quite happy with black's king. So obviously black missed something earlier. No, okay, so maybe it didn't miss something. So, and the point of this g5 move, of course, is if you take that g5 pawn, you're taking here. And this is fine. So what is the idea? E5. So I was looking at the e5 variation. Takes, knight g4. Yeah. So yeah, this looks very good for white, but maybe black actually can survive it. Is I think the moral of that. I mean, so at this point, Stockfish would say e5 is really strong. E5 d takes e5. Oh, I see. But the reason it's really strong. So it's even considering playing this move. So yeah, I hadn't considered the full. There are different possibilities. So, but it's I'm not sure which is the best. But maybe this move might even be better. I haven't analysed this. I'm not sure if it's opening Yes, this is not opening theory at all. But this might be even stronger for white. Knight d4, and then knight takes e5. And knight to f5. Okay, so but white's clearly got lots of ideas in this position. That's actually quite interesting. So basically, this move might not work simply because of this tactic, g5. And just for that reason, actually pushing might be better and try and win this pawn later. And this might be actually a lot stronger for white. But what was played in the game wasn't e5, it was bishop to c4. So just to begin it again, we have bishop to c4. And e6. And so, unlike in a lot of the other games, I feel like in this game, Zher wasn't taking the fight to his opponent. He's playing quite solidly. Takes, develop the knight. There's a very dangerous pin here on his king, and he's very alert to that. And the move blocking the pin doesn't work. It would lose a pawn as follows. So it's actually quite a difficult problem of how to defend this pin. And he did find, I mean, so the best move apparently is rook c8, but he found a very nice resource, which was bishop to g4. And the reason this is good is we are able to take off the piece which is attacking that knight, and then defend the pin. So it was a nice resource found by white. Just 1 second. Okay, so bishop to e7. Okay, so let's see. So he blocks off the file. Okay, so this is actually he's defended nicely. So this is interesting. It's the one game where he's not really taking the fight to the opponent. He's actually been scrabbling to defend most of this game, but he's done quite a good job. And he did defend with the counterattack, and I think that's been a feature. Defending by counterattack has been a feature of Zher0's play, and it's just sometimes you need to just defend by defending. So just to say, yeah, I would have been very concerned about this move, and I'm just wondering, I might have even considered this, saying, okay, I've lost a pawn. The problem is, yeah, this. Castles, bishop f8. I mean, and then try to win back this pawn at some stage. I might have been tempted to go for something like this. But, so what he went for instead was actually very good. Yeah, I can't fault what he did. It was a very, very good find, very good defensive find. Castle's out of danger, and so we get a kind of a very double-edged position where white has got an attack down the g file and black has got an attack down the c file. And so indeed, he brings his rook to the open file, and he reroutes his knight. Okay. So I have another line, knight h5, but okay. Yes. So the one piece we want to target, in a sense, in this position is this c3 square. So it would have been quite natural, also, whichever way you do it. This bishop f6 is quite a natural move in this position to try to target this square, and then we'll later bring in the queen maybe as well, and So bishop f6 is an idea in the position. But what happened in the game is he attacks the queen, and the opponent went ballistic against him, just going all out for a mating attack. Takes the rook, and this can't work because not only is f6 defended by the queen-bishop battery, if necessary, black would even push f6. So this isn't a mate because it can just be blocked. There's nothing. Black's got excellent control of the squares around his king. And so it's just a sacrifice of a rook for nothing. And at this point, Neil Wang resigned. So it was over-aggression from the opponent in this game. So yeah, actually quite well played, actually quite solid. Although the only thing is, I would have developed maybe I'd have recommended developing the king side a bit quicker to avoid running into trouble. So bishop to d7, that doesn't feel like the right move. I haven't commented more deeply here, but if I were to open up Opening Explorer here, for example, yeah, I would agree g6 would be the most likely move in this position. But I mean, this is also weird. But yeah. Okay, so it was a nice win. He played solidly, and it was the opponent who sacrificed for an attack that was not there. Everything's solid. Okay, so that was the board 6 game. So 2 more to go. Sorry, round 6. 2 more to go. And by this stage, we were near the top of the league standings. So we had some really good quality opposition. In round 7, he was playing against Lichess43, who had a near perfect, if not perfect, record up to that stage. And he had the black pieces. And Queen Sky Sky in chat will recognize the name because she played her game against this opponent and was doing reasonably well before missing a tactic and losing. Okay, so we have an open Sicilian, and I would say that Zero would have been very satisfied with this position. He's played. What's the whole point of c5 is to exchange your c pawn for the opponent's d pawn. We've got the exchange we wanted. Knight f6. So we're bringing our knights out, developing our knights. Knight c3. And in fact, what we'll see is both players follow opening theory very deep this game. Because in the case of Zero, he had studied this opening, prepared this opening very deeply in preparation for this game. But it turned out his opponent knew his opening very well as well. The perfect theory one. Now e5. e5 is an interesting move. So the knight will either go here or here. And Luca Gallia played the correct move, which is knight to d to b5, because it targets the d6 weakness. And it's actually quite hard to defend this weakness. In fact, there's only one way to really nicely defend it, and that's to push d6. So now you've got 2 defenders and 2 attackers. But because that's equal, that means that the pawn stands. Defenders always win if they're equal. So white played bishop to g5. Now that's all about control of the d5 square. So knight d5 is coming. Okay, so he kicks the knight. Again, this is all theory. He then played this, which the idea is to fork the 2 knights. The knight comes in as expected with this, putting pressure on this pin. Now there's a threat in the position. It's knight takes knight, and if you take back, take the bishop. Oh, and then you take this knight. But no, but there's also knight takes this pawn as a threat. So the knight is taken and taken back. F3 is a nice move. It both sort of helps the queen develop, but also this pawn is controlling the knight, possible knight jumps. So it's controlling the center. It's stopping this knight moving like this knight has moved right into the center. So it's a nice move. Bishop here is, so although the bishop is on the same color as the pawns, so this is black's good bishop and this is black's bad bishop in theory, this bishop is actually still quite an interesting piece because white doesn't have a dark squared bishop. So it is quite a precious piece in a way, but it's also an awkward piece because it doesn't have a natural home. So actually at the elite level, you would often get a variation like this: h4, g4, threatening g4, trapping the bishop here, and then even just taking the bishop. Queen comes in here, and that's a threat. Queen takes knight, so you have to defend. Castle, there's a threat of queen takes d6. So all these moves are very forcing. But if you ever take this pawn, that doesn't actually work because why doesn't it work? Because of this move hitting this pawn, and this pawn can't be defended, is it? Yeah, this pawn is very hard to defend. Like if you push this, it's under attack. If you push this, there's this move. So the e4 pawn is falling. So at the highest level, probably queen takes d6 is not played, but well, anyway, both of them could be played. Queen f5. There's only one move to defend white's pawn on f4. It'd be this, but then you have attacking the queen. The queen's kind of trapped, so it has to take back. Anyway, so this would be another line, and this is very pleasant actually for black. So yeah, so there is that idea h4 g4 in the position. If white absolutely wanted to trade the knight for the bishop. And the bishop is in a way in this position actually controlling the knight a little bit. But yeah, but this is a good knight, so it's not clear white would want to trade the bishop for the knight. So he tries to trade the knight for the knight, and white moves in his knight. So we're still following theory, by the way. Castles, and white plays a4. Takes, bishop to d7, and here we have the first sort of deviation from theory because the book move is queen to c2, but white plays queen to d1. A5 is correct against both queen to c2 and queen to d1. You're just controlling. The knight is sitting pretty in the center of the board, but you're controlling all the squares it could ever jump to. And is there another idea? And okay, and queen to b8, and yeah, and I shared this game with Oppa, and he said actually the usual plan in this position for black is king to h8 followed by f5, and the reason is just undermine the knight in the center of the board. So takes, and black's got the bishop pair, so white might have this very nice central knight, but yeah, black has some kind of compensation as well. And in fact, queen to b8 is sometimes played first, and then you could either move the rook in or go king h8, f5, the same sorts of ideas. b3, so still here, king h8, here, push. This is still very nice. Rook a7, just to avoid any trouble. So black has equalized according to theory, and there's a game from black by Wang Yue, a female grandmaster, or is it international master? But yeah. So this is, so yeah, we're up to move. Which move are we up to? Queen to b8, move 18, b3 is still theory, and then move 19 is the first deviation, where Zher0 played bishop to b5. So theory is queen to c2 rather than queen to b1, but we're still following this game by Wang Yue. And bishop to b5 is a mistake, because whenever you make a move, before you play the move on the board, you should calculate the exchanges. Exchange. Does white have any checks? They're no good. Does white have any forcing moves? So we did get take, but unfortunately there's a forcing move that follows. And white picks up, the exchange. Okay, Zero is not one to lie down when losing the exchange, so he immediately counterattacked, which is a very good move. Good thing to do. Queen takes c3, and then took back. Now, just to say, maybe queen takes e4 is even stronger because it's a central pawn, and yeah, not sure. Takes here, and also just to say, this wouldn't be so strong. So if white were to take that pawn, black is already equalizing. Because this rook is coming in here, the queen could be coming in here. So rook to, I'll just play through some lines. So rook d8 here, queen to, so the rook is defended by the bishop. Rook to e1 maybe, g6 just to give the king some luft. And yeah, the threat is, so maybe you go queen to e2 to try and, unfortunately that just runs into this. So it's a kind of awkward sort of situation for white actually. But maybe one idea is to reroute the bishop to try and target this weak square. Queen to e3 to try and stop it. Rook to d5 to try and defend it. Okay, so I'm just trying to play through some potential ideas. Queen to e4, try to exchange queens. Okay, you refuse the exchange. Okay, so in this position, black's bishop is actually just as good as white's rook. Well, it's not that it's just as good, it's actually that black is playing with 3 pieces against white's 2 pieces. So anyway, we'll follow what happened in the game. Queen takes pawn check, king here. It's basically, whichever pawn you take, this next move is really important. And this is why hats off to Luca Gaglia for making the right move here. So what move did he play as white here? Now there are many good moves, but there's one standout move. And so winning the exchange was a mistake from Zero, but he could have easily been in a position where there are 3 active pieces against 2 active pieces. And he didn't let that happen. So what was the move he played that really solidifies white's advantage? Can anyone guess in chat? Anyone at all? What should white play here? So number man 768 says rook c1. Well, the bishop's hitting c1. Oops. So, I mean, the point of this is to say this. So, again, Zero would have been very disappointed. So, counter chess says maybe g3. Yeah, so g3 is okay, but there's a much better move. I mean, not much better, like, but more obvious. No, actually, g3 is completely fine. But there's a stronger move because it comes with tempo, and that's h4. And it also gets the rook out faster, rook h3 coming. So the whole danger in that line which we showed you with queen takes d6 is black has got 3 active pieces against white's 2 active pieces. So yeah, number man 768 gets it. h4 because rook h3 comes with tempo. Look, all these moves with tempo. And this is just really impressive play from Lichess43. You know about bringing your pieces to the party? This is exactly it. He had one piece that wasn't active, that wasn't attacking. He's an exchange up, but he still keeps on developing his last piece. So he keeps on moving his pieces with tempo, gets his, so check, he moves the king out the way. And he's now pressing on black's clear weakness. And now pressing on the weak on the bishop. And now pressing again on the bishop, so the bishop has to drop back. So, and rook c to c4, when I saw this, I was scratching my head. Why did he play that? But why he played it becomes clear a second later, is to push here, takes, and the problem is there's a back rank issue. So yeah, so this is a problem. You can just drop back, but there's a back rank issue. So what actually happened in the game was takes, drop back. Because of this back rank issue, takes, and then double. And now he's threatening a fork of the queen and the rook on the back rank. So block. And now this is a very beautiful finish. Rook to c8. Okay, so the wonderful thing about a queen is it can defend the bishop diagonally. Queen to c6. So we're trying to distract the defender. And obviously, Zher was just hoping for this and try and survive with an exchange down. But no. After this, he's distracted the queen from defending the bishop. So actually, yeah, this was very difficult. Maybe that was the best defense. No, in fact, so if we try and hold on to the defense of the bishop, there's this coming in. So all we can do is try to throw in a check, king h2, and then escape. But we're not going to last long. A rook down. But he took the queen and ended with back rank mate. So very nicely played from Lichess. So what he did right was the thing which we were discussing in a lot of these games. Bring your pieces to the party. Well, and both sides just played the opening just perfectly. But it's not only in the opening bring your pieces to the party. It's okay. So this was unfortunate. So as I said, the idea here would have been this. So then that completes development, completes problems. This ran it straight into problems. Also to say, it's not clear why you'd want to defend, why you'd want to swap off your light squared bishop with white's light squared bishop, because remember that this light squared bishop is the only bishop that it is black's good bishop in a way. The pawns are on dark squares, so it's your good bishop. You should be pushing f5 because your pawns are facing it towards the king side and try to make something happen there. But I can see how this bishop looked powerful. So he exchanged it off. Unfortunately, it runs into problems. And white looked like he was behind in development, but look at the development with tempo, and that's a real good lesson. The development with tempo was awesome here, and very beautiful tactical finish with distracting the defender and getting the mate. So yeah, hats off to Lichess and a lot we can learn. And finally, the 8th round, and probably the best game of the lot, was Zher against Numberman 768, so who we've just been talking to in chat. And in this game, Zher is white, and we have another Sicilian. And g6, so the bishop is going to develop on the king side. d6, so quite similar to what we've been seeing, kind of openings we've been seeing Zher play himself when he was black. But now we have the first error, knight to g5. So it's very reasonable to, if this were Crazy House, you would absolutely consider, should I sacrifice my bishop on f7 and then go knight g5 and maybe drop a pawn here, and maybe can we drum up an attack? And if we went knight g5, we have to think, what would black do? He might go e6. Could we maybe even sacrifice some pieces on e6 and get in? Okay, but this isn't Crazy House. We've only got these pieces on the board. Now, what is it? Are we going to mate? Are we going to cause our opponent trouble with just 2 pieces? So this is the important. So this is the lesson of the whole stream. Finish development first. You need more pieces before you attack. Or as Opwezen told me, a Dutch IM coach used to say, invite friends to the game, or in Dutch, vrienden erbij, halen. And I'll just post that in the, well, I can't, but can I? Let's see if I can post that. Post the Dutch saying into the Twitch chat. There you go. Invite friends to the game. Vrienden erbij, halen. So the problem is, if you've developed all your pieces, if they're all ready for the attack, then you play it. Whereas this kind of move here is like treating your opponent like a complete patzer. I'm just going to wipe the floor just to beat you in 10 moves. I don't need all my pieces. I'm just going to beat you with 2 pieces and you're not even going to spot my threat. So it's about kind of respecting your opponent. Of if I were black in this position, I would spot this threat. What would I do if I were black? And actually thinking, if there's a defense, and if the defense doesn't defend properly, yeah, then you go for it. So you could think about this move, but then you think, black will play this, and has black improved his position or worsened his position? So the problem is black probably wants to play e6 anyway. So we've got a knight now stuck on g5 when we don't really want it on g5, and we've kind of only helped black. I mean, okay, so actually arguably we haven't helped black, because now the light squared bishop is stuck in. Okay, so there is a case for, okay, we've done this and then we come back. There's almost a case for that. It doesn't work in this particular position because of a crazy tactic, which is here, and this, which gives black quite a lot of initiative, because not only does he win one of these pieces, but then the d4 pawn is also falling. So DMSA or says, actually d6 was kind of weak, maybe castling was even better. You're absolutely right. I hadn't even noticed that. So yeah, good spot. Just castles is a very good move. And again, black wants to castle anyway, so what was the point of doing this? So so whatever you're doing, this would be a good move if you have to try and predict what will my opponent do in response, and does that improve or worsen his position? And if it improves his position, then there's no point in me doing it, even if it's really tempting. He might miss this attack. So that's why, yeah, Opwezen said it just gives the impression you're trying to win the game really quickly. It's a kind of move, but you need to maybe just get all your pieces out and then go for moves like that. Okay, and we'll see why it proves not so good. So e6. Okay, we've already moved the bishop once, now we move it again. So maybe stronger, no, not stronger. So just, anyway, castles. So we're not losing at all in this position. Takes, so we move the bishop 3 times now. Okay. And here black missed what would have been a nice resource, taking advantage of this misplaced knight. I mean, it's not that it's winning outright, it's that this knight has no squares to go to, it has to go back here. And then we could go e5, just pushing into the center, but also with So actually, why is that a problem? Because we could just take. Okay, so the point is not that you want to take this knight. It's more that the knight is not really doing anything. Is not going anywhere. Like this pawn push is actually stopping the knight from coming back into the center, and this pawn is stopping the knight from coming back to the center. So actually, in this position, White's best move apparently is King H1, just to get that knight out. Because actually, also that knight is keeping the queen. Occupied, having to defend it. So that's why it's not so great. So it's a slight positional idea that Black could have played h6 and e5. So what did Black do instead? He went e5 straight away. D takes e5, d takes e5, rook to d1. Yeah, so this is... Maybe this isn't quite as good because White is first to the party. So why White is grabbing that file first. So why, if I did this, and then e5, takes, and this, queen to b6. I'm not quite sure why this is. So why is this so much nicer for Black? I guess it's just the knight at the side of the board, but why can't we just play h6 later? So I'm trying to work out why. Yeah, why is this any? So I think what Numberman did here is also pretty decent. He did queen b6 indeed. So what I'm trying to think is why can't you go h6 now, for example? Okay, the queen gets out of the way. Okay, so why? Yeah, okay. So it's just a very minor point. Is you're hitting the queen with tempo, the queen can get out of the way, and now we've cleared f3. So it was a very minor positional point there. Okay, queen d3 itself wasn't. Yeah, it is one of the best moves in the position, but one should be very wary, because we've seen this pattern in other games we've done today, of putting the queen on the open file. In this case it's fine, but I mean after a bishop move rook here, the queen can be hit with tempo. So it's just something to be a little bit careful about. So bishop to g4, hitting the rook, but also making it a little bit harder for the knight to return to humanity. So after the rook is hit, yeah, now the queen is hit on the open file. So very nice play from Numberman, and now the knight is hit. And Zher is not one to respond with attack from just with retreat or defense. So he went bishop to e3, which is a perfectly decent move. I mean, I have to admit, when I was watching the game live, I was just thinking, just this. We made a mistake going here, we just have to retreat. It's true this opens up the king, but it's not so easy for Black to launch an attack. His pieces are kind of on the other side of the board. By the time he does get over, if necessary, we could always, slide our king into the corner, defend f3. If White's just lost his light squared bishop in order to do that move. So this isn't quite as dangerous as it looks. So in fact, the engine would say this is just minus 0.2 for Black. But hi there, ATB001 in Twitch chat. So it's not the end of the world, but what Zher went for, okay, again, he's not going for something defensive, just going for a counterattack. But if you calculate a counterattack, that is losing a pawn. Now, arguably, maybe he might have calculated that positional weakness was worth more than the pawn. So, what he really thought is that he was winning the pawn back. Yes, and it looks like he's winning the pawn back. This is true. But he's not. because of a move that Numberman missed in this position as black. And okay, I'm going to show the move, Queen A7 check, and the point is, if you go here, you have knight here check, a discovered check, and then you're losing the bishop. ATB asks, am I analysing games that are sent to you? Absolutely not, no. I'm analysing the game for a friend who's given up chess and to help people like try and avoid the mistakes he made, and hopefully he'll come back to chess. And I don't normally do standard chess, I normally do Crazy House, but I do quite a lot of standard chess as well. Okay, so the move Numberman missed was this. If you go this way, you're losing a piece. If you go this way, you're losing at least a pawn. Yeah, so just to say, these are games from a league, and I was his teammate on the league. So this could be a kind of idea. Okay, so clearly black is dominant in this position. So eventually it moves his rook away from the attack. So this is a nice position for black. Actually, there's an even better move than knight takes pawn in this position. But if Aaron is in the chat, maybe he can have a go at it, because this is going to be a tough one. And DMSA or says, what's the difference between that and Queen B6? There's no difference. Completely identical. Queen A7, Queen B6. I don't notice any difference. Okay, so the point is we want to checkmate white here. So the point is if yeah, so we can just as easily go Queen B6. Oh, so apparently Queen B6 is slightly worse, but I don't see why. I mean, yeah, I don't see why it's... So there is going to be a subtle reason why it's worse, but it's like -4 versus -5. And the reason is going to be incredibly subtle and deep. So, so what we said is that if we slide this way, we have a discovered check. Whichever way we go to here, we're just losing the bishop. So if we don't want to lose on the spot, we go this way. And then we're losing at least a pawn, but there's a... So we got a pawn and an attack. But in this position, black has a very good move. But I can't imagine anyone saying it. It's like beyond board one stuff. Maybe international master puzzle. And the hint I would say is this is a mate threat. So, and the defender of that mate threat is the queen. So ATB is asking my rank. I'm a board 2 player in the league, so that's like 1900 to 2000 classical on Lichess. I'm more of a Crazy House player, and just this week I hit top 100 in Crazy House. Okay, so there's a very I'm still okay. What does black play in this position? This is I'm still not understanding it, and I've seen it already. So let me try and... What is the idea? Okay, so I don't imagine anyone being able to find this move. So it's just, if I were black here, I'd take this pawn and continue the attack. DMSA or says rook d3. How did you find that? It is rook d3. So the point is queen can't take that rook, or you get checkmated. And if I do something like knight d1, defending the mate, so I'm threatening on taking the rook, is knight takes pawn check, king e2, and the idea is rook to g3 then. So coming in targeting g2. And so this queen is cutting off the king from, so, and rook takes g2 is a kind of difficult threat to meet. Maybe drop the bishop back, rook takes g2, and knight f2 might be an idea. And then this is the reason why a7 is better than b6. It's because the queen can swing across to cut off the king like this. The rook can hit the queen again, but now the queen can come in queen g4 check, and the king can try and run away to safety, but now, well, there's this picking up an exchange. That's one idea. There's also this, which I don't understand. Why can't I just take it? Because then I lose the knight. Yeah, that's obvious. So yeah, that's, again, a deflect the defender idea. The bishop is defending the knight, deflect the defender, and then win that knight. And what if I just run away? Then I just go takes, takes, and then this, and now I've got a double attack, both on the knight and the rook. Okay, so DMSA, or you are a legend, because you found rook d3. That is, and so that's just one example line. After rook d3, if you try and go like this, so you don't lose that pawn at least, there's still knight h2 check coming, king e2, rook g3. So basically this is going to happen whatever happens. You're going to take away the defense of g3, and rook is coming to g3. And going back, that is why you want to go to a7, because then you want to swing the queen back to here and then to here. Okay, I can't imagine finding rook d3 in a game. It's quite a stunning move. Okay, but yeah, queen a7 was missed, and instead black played rook to d6, doubling on the file. So the idea of this whole thing was Zher0 won back his pawn, so we're back to equality, and we are indeed back to equality because Number Man missed this very dangerous attack on the king. And he didn't need rook d3. He could have gone just take this pawn, and White's position is kind of falling apart. Or is very difficult to defend at least. And rook d3 just shatters everything. h3 was a decent move. h3 is a decent move because now all these ideas, the king now has a hole on h2 to go to. So now he delivered the check. He goes to h1. If he checks again, he can go to h2, and he's completely safe. Bishop to f6 swaps off bishops. It's kind of dangerous because the dark squares around. So as a rule, I would be always very wary of swapping off my fianchetto bishop, because that is like your king's personal guardian. But I guess he didn't want to play knight f6 directly because, yeah, I'm not sure why. But okay, so he swaps off. I mean, this is actually slightly better. So bishop f6 is the best move in the position, apparently. But I would just be a little bit wary about it. So why is it the best move in the position? Because I would probably just go knight f6. So I'm just trying to remember why this is. So it must be this bishop is quite a good attacker. But let me see. Yeah, so I'm curious myself why knight f6 isn't just as good. I guess this bishop is sort of blocked in by the pawn, whereas this is a very active bishop. It's going to cause a lot of trouble. That knight's going to settle in on here, and so maybe it's a recognition that White's bishop is actually quite a decent piece. Knight a4 hits the queen, challenging the open file. This looks like it wins a pawn, but this pawn on e5 is weak. It's like in the Petrov. If you take this pawn, the e5 pawn will also fall. Takes, and this pawn does indeed fall. So it's still quite an equal position. Rook to e1. So both sides with this pawn is under attack, so he just defends it by moving the knight. So both sides have got 3 pieces. It's and it's a case of maneuvering those pieces to the best advantage of both. And this move, it looks like he wants to go knight here to here, or maybe even to here. A5 here, queen here, and yeah. So actually, there was a very nice move in this position, which is rook e4. So in this position, the rook is under attack. So we can't just go and take the pawn and attack his rook, because we lose our rook with check. But we can hit the queen with tempo and then take on c6. And so this was a big opportunity missed. Queen takes c6. There's no perpetual or anything. All the checking squares are covered. It's difficult to know what black does because something's falling. Maybe rook to d8, but then looks like oh yes, okay. So sorry, the knight is protected. Okay, but okay. Let's see what's the threat here. The knight doesn't have that many squares though. It can't go here, can't go here, can't go here, can't go here. So actually a4, knight to a7. Queen to c3 apparently is an idea, threatening. If you take the knight, you've got this and this, checkmate. So it's nothing. Rook to c8 hitting here, but then you've got knight f6 check and dangers of discoveries. If king to f8, we've got. Yeah, this is actually it's quite hard to calculate exactly. So white's pieces are clearly very active and very coordinated, but it's hard to see a concrete winning line, and I have to admit I haven't actually calculated. But if king to h8, you have this takes and this check, which looks nasty. Well, at least we've got this picking up the knight, for example. Oh no, we don't, because oh yes, because then we can come back and stop any. Yeah, we can come back and stop anything there, but we could also move the king to f8, and it's all going to be. Can we find some kind of... Oh, no, we can't go move the king to f8 because that just hangs the queen straight away. Okay, so actually the king does have to kind of walk into the path of this discovery. Yeah, so I guess that's the best I could find, this check and winning the knight. Because you're threatening mate and you're threatening to win the knight. He goes queen h6. We could even go knight takes f6, and if knight c8, queen takes c8. Okay, so it's a very precarious position if white had found this move, rook e4. But instead he played rook to d1, and black played knight d4, and this sort of walks into a pin. Probably the best was rook to c8, but yeah, white's still got very centralized pieces, and so it's still quite a nice position for. This is not good. Whoa, that's not good at all. Rook here. Yeah, so I haven't analyzed this in depth, but basically this is actually excellent from Zher because all his pieces are quite central. He's really they're central and active, and this is exactly how he should have been playing the other games. But then a slight problem strikes. So he's got a nice pin on the queen, and there's only one way out, pretty much. Well, there are two ways out. You either go knight to c5, defending the queen, and the other way out was quite subtle, which is defending the knight with the pawn. that also works for a very subtle reason, that when the knight takes that pawn, you get a pin back. So when I take here, queen here check, this defends the check and also threatens queen takes pawn check, which will be lethal. So for example, if black were just to take the knight, it would be queen takes f7 check, king h8, queen f6. Is that right? Queen f6 check. Yeah, queen f6, king h8. Queen f6 check will work. And yeah, white would be 2 pawns up and probably in a winning endgame. But actually, white's got a stronger move. Sorry, black's got a stronger move, I meant, which is rook to c7, defending the f7 weakness, and then taking this knight. So that would have been another way of defending. But the way he defended was better, which was knight to c5. Okay, and now this was a critical position. Because the best move for white here is simply to pick up the pawn with tempo attacking the rook. But white saw there's a check. So it's like we saw in the round 2 game against Yvette Nicole. A knight and a queen could be threatening, and they're both lurking around white's king. It does look rather threatening. And it requires calculation. Queen takes pawn, knight here check. But what next? There is no follow-up. Black just has one check and that's it. It's definitely something you should be concerned about, because you should always check. Checking lines, exchange lines, forcing lines, but you follow it. Knight here check, king here or king here. There's no real follow-up. If you just take, and the point is, you've got some serious threats of your own. So yeah, if you ran here, you might have another check. Here, there are no more checks. So if there are no more checks, he'd have to move his rook out of the way because it's under attack. And now it's my turn. So I could, for example, make sure I don't lose control of that diagonal. Yeah, and it's suddenly it's white's turn to attack, and he's a pawn up. And it turns out he's much more than a pawn up in terms of position. So this was queen takes pawn was really a golden opportunity. White's got the central queen, the coordination of all his pieces, and let me see. So yeah, also just to say, I thought I had some interesting line here. Yeah, so the interesting line I had is, suppose rook goes to here, and you go here check, and I know this is a ridiculous move, but suppose Numberman had put his queen on h6 just for fun. The point of this is just to show that there is a checkmate, there is a so-called hookmate, where the knight is defended and the rook is defended by the knight. So there is a kind of hookmate lurking in this position for white. Of course, in reality, king could run here, but then there'd be even this check picking up the queen. Okay, this is not. It's not that this is in the position, because firstly, the rook doesn't have to move off the back rank, and secondly, even if it does move off the back rank, the queen could just get out of the way, so the king can come out safely. So this is by no means a forced thing, but it's something that, as a spectator of the game, and as a player of the game, one should be aware of. That this possibility exists. There is this mating pattern that exists in the position. But anyway, whereas here there's no mating pattern with queen and knight. There's nothing, no real threat. Okay, but Zero is a little bit concerned, so just took, take, and he's now in an endgame which is more drawish. And he pushes, and actually suddenly he finds himself in a little bit of trouble after this move, because black is threatening to take a pawn with check. And probably the best defense is knight f6 and then pushing that pawn and taking that pawn back and then dropping back to g1. That's probably the best defense. And in this position, not even taking this pawn, something very subtle, saying, okay, I'll take that pawn a little bit later, because if you step forwards, I'm actually going to sacrifice my rook on that pawn and then win your rook. Or if you don't step forwards and move your rook, I'll take that pawn and I'll win. And you can check and win this pawn, but I'm now winning this pawn. So either way, we're going into a drawn endgame. So I hope I didn't go through that too quickly. So the key move basically is b3, so we don't lose that pawn with check. Okay, but what happened in the game was he took the pawn and lost the pawn on b2, and then something quite tragic happened. I think this is already losing for white. He should have stepped back to g1, but instead stepped up to g3. And maybe someone in the chat can tell me what black played. And maybe not Numberman. Someone else in the chat can tell me what black played in this position. And Erin says, does this count as a hookmate? And yes, indeed it does. And HDNK also gets it in the chat. Rook g2 checkmate. So a game in which seesawed a bit. So it's quite an interesting game. And it looked, earlier in the game I was thinking, interesting hookmate ideas for white. And in the end, white himself was stunned by a hookmate. And I have to say also there were other nasty ideas which were, let me see. I remember there were other nasty ideas as well, because another idea you might think is let's just defend that pawn with the rook. And that doesn't work at all, because there's this check also lurking in the position. So it was a very, the sort of inactive rook suddenly gets active. So it looked like white was positioned a little bit better, and then suddenly with this move, the activation of the rook, I mean, it looks like the rook and the knight are both at the edge of the board, whereas white's pieces are in the center of the board. But yeah, if he does the obvious looking rook to d2, that runs into this check, losing the rook, and it's game over. But he lost a different way, so it needed b3 in this position. And he lost a different way with this and the hook mate. Yeah, so I think that was quite well played though from both players. The lesson is calculating, like not letting the fear get to you. I think when he took queens, it's like it was psychologically he was going for the draw, and he just needed to calculate that black didn't have any threat. Now here, black missed a chance to win. So yeah, black was slightly better here, and then he went into a position in the endgame, kind of turned it around. Zero got into a position where he was slightly better, his pieces are more active. He had done the thing which we said the whole video, bring your pieces to the party, coordinate your pieces, really nice play, but you still need to finish the job. So queen takes pawn would be getting the job done. And this is really hard for black to hold. If your pieces are coordinated, there are many checkmates and such like in the position that you can run into, double attacks and so on. If you activate your pieces, then tactics will come. So this is the theme of this video. If you activate your pieces, you will find that the tactics favor you. And when the tactics favor you, like here, he got the pin. You do have to, this is just a last hope. I mean, it's only a pawn, but you have to take. It turns out the only move. This is actually a very difficult position for black because this square is taken, this square is taken. This square is not taken, but it's kind of scary. This square, there's a knight here check winning it. This square is taken. this square is taken. Okay, so there are only two reasonable moves in this position, namely here and here, if he had done this. In that position, you have queen. No. In this position, you have queen to c3 with ideas of this check and winning the rook. And again, it's quite a tough position for black to defend. You could go queen e7, just knight f6, king f8. Yeah, I mean, I'm not seeing something concrete, but queen h4. It's it's not something concrete, but it's probably white's dropping both those pawns on the queen side. So the other move is rook a7. That's a bit more secure, and then it's not so clear. We could again go queen to c3. The knight's still defended, going for this idea. Then black does have this one check, and you have to be careful. Don't go to g1, or you get a fork. So you have to go here. But knight h5 might threaten this, and also stops anything too dangerous happening with knight f6. That blocks all that happening. So yeah, this would have probably been the best continuation from black, and yeah, I wouldn't. This might, with best play from black, actually be a draw. If he gets his pieces coordinated, it's just the one pawn advantage. But it might actually be quite hard actually to defend. So it's quite unclear. Maybe this hitting the rook is one idea. Maybe queen f4, because white's queen is too active. So maybe this would be a continuation. And so yeah, maybe this is a draw, objectively speaking. But this would be the way to play for the win. If it was going for the queen exchange, then yeah, then this was unfortunate that black activates his rook and gets checkmate on the board. Okay, so I hope you've enjoyed this recap of these 8 boards. Not eight rounds rather, of Zero. So as we saw, he beat Neil Wang in round 6, he drew against Evot Nicole in round 2, and he won very nicely in round 1. But there are lots of things he could learn from these games, especially developing his pieces in the opening, and not only in the opening, also in the middle game, bringing all the pieces to the party. And secondly, especially when he's losing, or especially when he's afraid that there's some danger lurking in the position, the importance of actually really calculating what is the best option, and to take time, and if necessary, and really calculate the least worst option, or to calculating that the opponent's perceived threats are just perceived threats. There's nothing too dangerous about them. Okay, so yeah, thanks Aaron Fox, especially who's been following with us. Thanks everyone else, and I hope Zero rejoins chess and sees the stream one day soon. Okay, thanks everyone for watching.